we need to sort out something. If there are participants who will be having a problem in language, when it comes to language, can they please exchange with those who are sitting here so that they can hear what we are saying here at the front? Because there will be interpreters. Ukuba ngaba apha kubantu abazoparticipata, ukhona umuntu onqwenela into yokuba yena abe uyatolikelwa ngokwe-language a-comfortable ngayo, sicela azame ukutshintsha azohlala apha ngaphambili ukuze akwazi into yobana eve xa kutranslatewa, because kuzawutranslatewa. I-problem yethu ke is that zikhona i-mics apha ngaphambili. I-mic evakalayo is only i-mic yomntu ozobe ethetha, but eyalo ozobe etolika ayizukwazi ukuvakala apho kuni phezulu. Asinqweneli ke into yoba kube khona umntu ozawuthi uhambe engakhange eve okanye uye waxakwa kukuparticipate okanye ukuthabatha inxaxheba kulo msitho esikuwo ngenxa yokuba akevanga uba kuthiwani okanye akakhange akwazi ukuthetha ulwimi lwasemzini. Akusosilungu kuphela ke sizothethwa, khona ne-Afrikaans, so izawusincedisa ke into yobana sizilungiselele kwangoko uze sikwazi into yoba sitolikeke. As much as uba kuzawuphinde kuthathwe nesiXhosa siguqulelwe kulwimi lwasemlungwini. Ndicinga uba ndiyevakala ne? Uzawufika umcele kumntu, guys, uzufika uthi ndingulo kaloku mntu ofuna utolikelwa ndiyahlala apha. Kuyevakala ne? Sisorted lithakazi apho phezulu. Sizawuva. Sure. Are we sorted on this side? Am I audible enough? Okay. On that side? Miss Fihlani, are you sorted on your side? Am I audible enough? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. May we all sing the national anthem and immediately after it, the women's anthem.
Equality, development, and peace.
Thank you. You may be seated. Members must keep cell phones and other devices on silent. All presenters will make use of the podium that is here. Delegates are requested to stand when addressing the chair in line with our rules. Interpretations channels are as follows. English is channel 1, Sesotho channel 2, Xhosa is channel 3, and Afrikaans is channel 4. Let me make important announcements. Restrooms that are unisex. There are 2 cubicles in the ground floor where the house is. 2 other unisex restrooms are on the sides by the galleries. These are marked unisex. Other restrooms for on the outer sides of the house are as marked. Honorable members, can we respect this parliamentary LGBTQIA plus dialogue, please? It is my great pleasure to acknowledge the following guests: MEC Fanta and MEC Lusiti, Speaker and Deputy Speaker from the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, presiding officers, MPLs present, executive mayors and mayors from the following municipalities: Umzimvubu Municipality, Alfred Nzo, Joe Gabi, Ndlambe, Sarah Baltman, Chief Whips from Alfred Nzo, Sarah Baltman, and Joe Gabi. Our esteemed speakers that will be introduced in the program, representatives from Chapter 9 institutions, representatives from the NGO sector, government departments, and our esteemed guests from various municipalities. I want to believe that we do have a program in front of us, all of us. With the ground rules being set, let me now call on our Honorable Speaker of the Eastern Cape Legislature, who is also the President of the CPA Eastern Cape branch, Honorable Sauls August, to do the official opening and give us the purpose of the day. Over to you, Honorable Speaker.
My apologies, I'm just struggling with the flu. And you can clap for me. Thank you. I had a competition today with somebody, I won't say who in the House, Chairperson. There was supposed to be a hair competition, but I see both of us only got to wet our hairs this morning. But this person came to brag about their red shoes. Unfortunately, I cannot compete on that level with them. But let me first acknowledge the Deputy Speaker to the Legislature, representatives from the House of Traditional Leaders, Nkosikazi Mlambiso, the Chief Whip to the Legislature, our Honorable Makashela, Deputy Chief Whip, Honorable Fishlani, the chairperson of the Commonwealth Women's Parliamentarian, who is hosting the program, Honorable Matkubela, the chairperson of committees, Honorable Duba, the MEC for the Department of Social Development, Honorable Fanta, as well as Honorable Mani Luciti, Department of Human Settlement, that is with us, the executive mayors and the chief whips from the various municipalities, the leaders of political parties represented at the legislature, the United Nations Human Rights Commission representative, the South African Human Rights Commission representatives from the Organization for Men's Health and Gender Justice from Botswana, the representative from SENEC, as well as the Provincial Task Team on Hate Crime and other sectors that are representative. To all delegates and participants to the dialogue, molweni nonke, goeiemorgen mense, good morning. Thank you so much, Chief Whip. We converge here today during the historic Women's Month, a month recognizing the historic efforts and revolutionary actions of thousands of women who dared the evil apartheid system by marching to the Union Building in 1956 to protest against the past laws. The confrontation of an oppressive system and discriminatory laws by women on that day conveyed a strong message that women could no longer be pushed into the peripheries in society, but could be equal partners and drivers of social change. As we congregate on this important gathering today, we must draw inspiration from the resilience of the class of 1956. The Eastern Cape sub-branch of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians has resolved to organize a session with the LGBTQI+ community emanating from the CPA and the CWP conferences. And these resolutions wanted to foster a culture of respect, fairness, and dignity amongst parliamentarians and society at large. The CPA and the CWP conferences identified a need for appropriate training, development of legislations, codes of conduct, independent and effective means of investigation to prevent, address harassment and gender-based violence in Parliament and in society at large. The session is organized for the LGBTQI+ community in response to those resolutions that have been taken. We all know that numerous studies indicate that the community of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and questioning youth are often victims of violence, bullying, and verbal harassment, and are more than likely than their straight peers to experience such victimization. Studies indicate that indirect harassment, such as hearing jokes and expressions with homophobic undertones, is very, very common. Despite numerous laws enacted to protect the rights and citizens of South Africa, particularly the rights of the LGBTQI+ community, discrimination and hate crimes persist against the community. The most recent case was reported in Nelson Mandela Metro, where a certain shop displayed a notice denying access to the LGBTQA patrons to this specific outlet. This critical dialogue provides an opportunity for the legislator to promote, to affirm the constitutional rights of the LGBTQA+ community, and for us as leadership to advocate for all citizens to respect these rights and allow the LGBTQI+ community to enjoy their freedoms and their rights. The legal obligation of states to safeguard the human rights of the LGBTQI+ community are well established in international human rights law, based on the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights and subsequently agreed international human rights treaties. The protection of the LGBTQI+ rights in South Africa is based on Section 9 of our Constitution, which protects discrimination based on sex, gender, or sexual orientation, and applies to government as well as private parties. People, irrespective of sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity, are entitled to enjoy the protections provided for by the international human rights law. including in respect of rights to life, security of person and privacy, the right to be free from torture, arbitrary arrest and detention, the right to be free from discrimination, and the right to freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly. The theme for the event is entrenching the right of freedom of sexual orientation, a nation of free of gender discrimination and hate crimes. It is therefore incumbent upon us to raise awareness on preventing and combating hate crimes and hate speeches towards the LGBTQIA plus community. It's very long. As we approach, and it's still going, it's an evolving acronym. As we approach the 30th anniversary of our hard-earned freedom and democracy next year, we can't allow anyone within our society to be deprived of their constitutional rights, which is enshrined in our beautiful Constitution. It is incumbent on the legislative sector to ensure that the laws that have been passed through the legislative process are respected and that all citizens enjoy the laws that have been passed. This dialogue, therefore, intends to advance respect and protection of rights for the LGBTQI plus community who face persecution in almost all communities, particularly here in the Eastern Cape. Through this dialogue, we aim to create a platform for direct engagement on issues affecting the sector, such as discrimination, bullying, and gender-based violence, so that full consideration of inputs is made for effective decision-making. This dialogue should instill a better understanding of the meaning of coexistence in a diverse society with different sex, gender, or sexual orientation, leading to the promotion of a positive social behavioral change. Subsequent resolutions taken during this dialogue will then be tabled in our House, and it will then be taken as House resolutions for government departments to implement and for us as the legislature to monitor it through the committee system. I welcome you all, and I hope that we will have a fruitful deliberations and emerge with strengthened resolution. Inkosi kakhulu, baie dankie mense.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and our President of the Eastern Cape Branch CPA. Let me also acknowledge the presence of the speakers from our municipalities. Joe Gabi, District Municipality, and all other district municipalities and metros and local municipalities. I now call on Honorable Gaya, the Treasurer of the Eastern Cape CWP, to do the introduction of our speakers for the day.
Thank you very much, Program Director, with CPA. Kule Parlamente yalapha eMpuma Koloni, mandibulise kuye wonke umuntu okhona olapha phakathi kwethu. Honorable Speaker of the Provincial Legislature, Honorable MEC wakwa Social Development, Mamo Bukiwe Fanta, Deputy Speaker of the Provincial Legislature, members of the Provincial Legislature, trekkers from the districts, metros, and the local municipalities across our province, our presenters and invited guests, participants, and everyone viewing the proceeding across the social media platforms. Siyabulisa. Honorable Chairperson, allow me to introduce our speakers who are part of the program today.
Our first speaker will be Miss Steve. Let's see me. Miss Steve, where?
Our
Okay.
ANC and EC member.
Miss Steve, can you please? Thank you very much. Kutheno nepavinje Steve Glenhle, special for emalungwini. She's a founder and executive director of Access Chapter 2, a human rights organization focusing on LGBTI people, women and girls in their diversities, including addressing issues of gender equity. Steve is a prominent leader with over 16 years experience of high-level international policy and human rights matters. She currently serves as a co-chairperson of the South African National AIDS Council, a portfolio which is co-chaired with Utata Paul Mashatile, who is currently Deputy President of our country. She is chairperson of SANAC National Civil Society Forum. She co-chairs the National Task Team established by the Department of Justice to address hate crimes and GBV. Steve was appointed by the Minister of Health as a councillor in the South African Pharmacy Council and on the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Social and Behavioral Aspects of COVID-19. Internationally, she currently serves as the chairperson of the Commonwealth Equality Network with the membership in 54 Commonwealth countries. She also serves as a member of Global UN Women LGBTI Advisory Group and Southern African UN Women Civil Society Advisory Group, the Women for Global Fund Network and other national CSO boards. Steve is a seasoned leader, feminist, and a human rights advocate. Besimbonile ke mos Steve. And our next guest, Kumama unkosikazi noSizwe Mhlambiso. Uphaikago Steve. Umama unoSizwe Mhlambiso is a regent traditional leader of Nkambo Traditional Council, pa Middle Drift, Upper Amatole, a member of Amahakabe Kingdom Royal Council, a member of the Mid-Drift Stakeholders Forum, chairperson of Khakhabe Women, a member of the Provincial House of Traditional and Khoisan leaders representing Amahakabe King Avululwandle. Ngoku ke umama Mhlambiso, she is currently serving in the executive of the Provincial House, EXCO ke ukutsho as deputy leader. So, mama ke lo uphakathi kwethu umama unkosikazi Siphiwe Mhlambiso. Siphinde sibe nomama unoChina Skepe. Okay. Umama unoChina Skepe uzele ke pha wazalelwa pha eNgquza municipality pha kulo honorable Fihlane. She served in a local LGBTI forum known as Ingquza LGBT as Usihlalo. She also served as a secretary of LGBTI sector in Nelson Mandela Bay District, and now she is serving in a provincial structure as unobhala we LGBTI sector apha kweli phondo lalapha eMpuma Koloni. She is currently employed by Access Chapter 2 organizations as provincial paralegal officer. Siphinde size kowesithathu umama ubusisiwe Dlamini khandi mbone kubuhleliphi. Oh.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Usisi, she's a legal qualified activist and public official with 29 years working experience in human rights field. She started her activism from 1994 doing human rights work with main focus in gender-based violence. She joined the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development in 2008 with the responsibility to coordinate the implementation of Domestic Violence Act and accessing progress made by the courts in ensuring that the rights of the activisms of domestic violence are protected. She further coordinated the drafting of the National Action Plan against racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. I am skipping some of Ilanduka of izinto that were dotted up due to it, so my apologies. There's just a lot, so I have to cover time that was allocated to me. Our seventh speaker, it's Sally Ganda. Sally Ganda, where you seated?
Is connecting visually.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Masana. Sally is a human rights officer. She's part of us. She's connected virtually. So she's a human rights officer at the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, Regional Office of Southern Africa. The Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, Regional Office of Southern Africa is situated in Pretoria and covers 14 countries in the region. The office has the following broad focus areas: increasing implementation of the international human rights mechanisms, outcomes, enhancing equality and countering discrimination, enhancing, protecting civic space and people's participation, early warning, prevention and protection of human rights in situation of conflict and insecurity, rule of law and accountability, and integrating human rights in sustainable development. Sally key focus area is enhancing equality and countering discrimination. And our eighth, and I want to believe that is our last speaker, that I also want to believe that he's also connected virtually. Ms. Musana, can you also confirm that?
Which one?
Okay.
Yeah, it's virtual.
Kame Mosweu is a human rights and a gender development practitioner with special interests and previous work centered in strategy development, policy analysis, evidence-based advocacy, research and community movement building, and vast experience and work in gender, human rights, LGBTQIA inclusion, and HIV, AIDS.
Pronounce it wrong.
LGBTQI
LGBTQIA plus.
plus. No, I think my apologies for that. I think there's something, and my apologies, my people is LGBTQI. Diyayazi kaloku bethu. Kwakulotywa ke bethu. Esinkini sihle. He carries 10 years experience in gender and human rights development, having widely worked in Southern and Eastern, mainly in, my apologies, in Southern and Eastern Africa, mainly in human rights, gender equality, and gender mainstreaming, gender-based violence. In May 2022, Uonga Kame was appointed through Botswana Parliament as Botswana National Gender Commission. Through the position, he has been able to advocate for inclusion of LGBTIQ,
LGBTQIA plus.
All right. It's fine. We're learning as we proceed. In the national agenda, he is the co-chair of the National Key Populations. Please let us put hands together for our speakers that I have just introduced. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you, Honorable Kaya. We will now call on Mr. Musweu to give us a presentation on the background of LGBTQIA plus sector. A perspective from Botswana. He'll give us a perspective from Botswana, but unfortunately, he is not with us, so his presentation is going to be done virtually.
Good morning. I don't know if I'm audible. Please just give me a sign that you can hear me well. Good morning. Kindly just give me a sign that you can hear me on your side. Good morning. I'm not, okay, great stuff. A very good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be part of this program. I'm sad that I can't be there. I'm seeing a lot of people, familiar faces, Steve Lisike, who has done amazing work, not just in South Africa, but I think across Africa. I am happy to obviously be sharing the concept of Botswana. As you'd know, in the past couple of years, Botswana has done quite, I think we've had quite great landmark cases or rulings that continue to affirm LGBTI persons in Botswana. But that hasn't always been the case. It hasn't always been the easiest thing. And I'm hoping that with this very talk, we'll be able to get some of those things. I think, first of all, it's important to note the role that I think South Africa has done, or the toning that South Africa has done, not just to Botswana, but across Africa in terms of LGBTI rights, and I think human rights in a general term. We obviously would know that South Africa is the first African country to take a stance in relation to LGBTI persons and their rights. And a lot of us in Botswana and a lot of us across Africa have really enjoyed that. I think a lot of us, for example, simple things that we might take easily, things like pride, the gay pride. A lot of us across Africa are able to enjoy that fully, but we have seen it happen in South Africa. And for many of us who've been, I remember personally, my first pride was in Joburg, and a lot of Botswana would be leaving Botswana to go to Joburg to have like a weekend of just being with like-minded people. Like I said, we have had great rulings in Botswana, but that, of course, was influenced a lot by South Africa and what we've seen in South Africa. We've had three major landmark cases. The first one is in 2014, which was around really recognizing LGBTI persons in Botswana. But prior to 2014, Lekhabibo, which is the Lesbians, Gays, Bisexuals Organization of Botswana, had been trying or had been denied registration for a period of 10 years. So they had been trying for 10 years to register, but not been denied. And what that denial essentially meant was that the country was refusing to acknowledge that they're LGBTI persons. In fact, one of the cases or issues that they constantly brought forward or forth was that there is not enough data. And the famous question across Africa, where are the queer people? Where are the LGBTI persons? But in 2014, myself and together with other LGBTI persons, about 10 of us, we decided to get together and take the government of Botswana to court for refusal to register Lekhabibo, essentially refusing to acknowledge LGBTI persons, and I think fundamentally to acknowledge human rights. And what that case really was about was denial or refusal to acknowledge association, and by extension, freedom of identity, and like I constantly say, freedom to humanity. In 2014, the High Court of Botswana ruled that indeed Lekhabibo deserved to be registered as it aimed to advance human rights of LGBTI persons and really anyone in Botswana. The government of Botswana then took a decision to take this court, this ruling to the High Court, to Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal continued to affirm the ruling by the High Court that indeed Lekhabibo had a right to register. Indeed, LGBTI persons deserved to be acknowledged in Botswana, and that's the only way that we'll be able to include them in the development of the country. That was the first case. I think that was a big case. You might be aware of it. It was a big win for us. Lekhabibo was officially registered. The second case was what we have, or what is often known as the decrim case or the decriminalization case. The Constitution of Botswana has a section known as Section 164, which was fundamentally criminalizing same-sex act, and I think by extension criminalizing LGBTI persons to be together or to live in Botswana. Once again, we took the government to court on that task, and the High Court ruled that that was unethical, it was unhuman, and it was really out of time. It had to be removed from the Constitution. The government of Botswana again took this court ruling to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal also affirmed that indeed that criminalization of same-sex had no space or time in current Botswana. So yes, we have had some fundamentally great rulings, but like I said, they've not always been easy. It has called the community to stand and the community to come together. But what does this mean? How does that have changed, or how has it changed the lives and realities of LGBTI persons in Botswana? And I think a lot. It means that we are now able to speak on issues that affect us. It means now there's some accountability structure where we can say the rulings, the court has said this, why are you not treating people? One of the issues that have really been coming out from LGBTI persons in Botswana over the years has been institutionalized stigma and discrimination, homophobia, transphobia, which is hate towards LGBTI persons. And I think we'd agree fundamentally, homophobia and transphobia is rooted deeply in concepts of patriarchy, but also violence, because homophobia to hate and go to an extent of making it so difficult for someone to live their lives fully and to enjoy their freedoms is fundamentally violent. Because I think homophobia and violence towards LGBTI persons, it violates you in ways that you can't even imagine. You don't know how to get and put together because constantly you're living in fear. But what has the community of Botswana done? What have we done over the years? I think one of the things that we have done as Botswana to try and really fight for our space and to be heard and to be seen with all that has happened is that we have found reason in telling our stories and telling our narratives. So we are creating a story of telling our lives, telling how it is to be LGBTI persons in Botswana and to now. The issue is we always think of LGBTI persons as a very Western concept. That it's it's like a white thing, it's like Western. And so we've decided to tell our indigenous story of what it means to be African, what it means to be Botswana and queer in Botswana. And I think that has done quite a lot of work because we're putting face to the issue, we're putting face to our realities in Botswana in terms of how do we access healthcare services. Something as simple as that. We've had LGBTI persons over the years complain about the kind of stigma and discrimination that they face in healthcare facilities. But since the rulings, we have seen Botswana come out and the healthcare facility and healthcare fraternity come out to engage with LGBTI persons. Our current national strategic framework really prioritizes provision of non-discriminatory and equitable health services to LGBTI persons and together with sex workers. I think that has been a great move. It's because LGBTI persons decide to speak out, LGBTI persons decide to demand the seat at the table. And I think once again, it's a leaf that we've really taken from the story of South Africa and how they relate to LGBTI persons. We've seen what grassroots organizing have done. And so we are really learning and learning towards that and sharing our stories because we are then getting the attention of legislatures and policymakers to understand how that discrimination makes it difficult for LGBT persons in Botswana. The queer community, I think from all that what we're doing is constantly to say we are here. It's to say we will not be moved, but you will hear us. As we often say, if they don't give you a seat at the table, then you better bring your camp chair. And I think we've done that. We're sitting on top of the table to really speak about our rights and what we think we deserve. And this is, I think it has shown, as shared, last year I was nominated or appointed as a National Agenda Commissioner. And I think that's a great step as an LGBTI and openly gay man to be, leading that kind of work says a lot about the direction that the country wants to take in terms of inclusion and mainstreaming issues of gender. And I think behind me, it's not just my story. Behind me have been other LGBTI persons who've seen, that visibility increase in terms of development and human rights in Botswana. Our concept really is about demanding that we be heard, we be seen, but that does not come easy. A couple of years ago, I'll share a story. A couple of years ago, I had went for an interview, a job interview. I thought I did great. The other thing got pop, right? So I thought, okay, lovely, man. I've done great in this interview, but I received information that I did not get that job. And again, because I was asking people, why didn't I get the job? How can I better myself for the next interview? And somebody said to me, in confidence, that you did not get your job because the company was worried that, because you are gay, you might be off-brand of the work that we do. And that really, like I said, homophobia is violent. You don't know how to remove yourself from yourself. How do you navigate social spaces? How do you navigate professional spaces where your identity and sexual orientation, essentially who you are, is questioned at each and every juncture? It means that LGBTI persons have to constantly be trying to double up efforts just to show that I'm more than gay. I'm actually human. I'm a professional. I can do some work. But over the years, the government of Botswana has reversed the Employment Act to particularly put a clause that prohibits anyone from losing their employment on the basis of their sexual orientation. But again, that takes us to educate the community to know that if you are discriminated on the basis of sexual orientation, you should know that the government of Botswana, through the Employment Act and labor law, will protect you. But should we always be fighting for us to be heard and for us to be seen? Who should do it? I think somebody has to definitely continue doing it. And that's why many of us have put ourselves in the front line to say we will speak about the realities of our people. We will speak about the experiences of LGBTI persons in Botswana to ensure that we're also respected and seen for who we are and what you are. Another thing that I think has improved a couple of years ago, you will be shocked that we recently only started giving lubricants as a minimum service package for LGBTI persons. In the past, that was not heard of. And so one time we went to an interview, an engagement with a senior government official, and they said, who are these people? You're talking about gay man, MSM, LGBTIQIA, it's a lot, but where are these people? And, we gave a brilliant conversation, a brilliant presentation, but he asked, where are these people? And I think, it's an M&E thing. You want to know the numbers. And we didn't have the numbers. And I said to the senior person, if you know the number of heterosexual people, then you can just, say heterosexual people, total population of Botswana minus heterosexual people, we will have the remaining as LGBTI persons. And that meeting didn't go very well. But essentially what I was saying is that LGBTI persons, we don't have a rubber stamp that says gay or lesbian or trans. Our services should ensure that we provide services that are non-discriminatory to each and every person, and that nobody leaves the employment space, nobody leaves your office feeling less of a human because of your beliefs and your concept. We're currently running a project here in Men for Health and for the LGBTI community, particularly engaging with stakeholders such as yourselves, legislators, policymakers, healthcare providers, people in law and policy reforms, and we call our project "Where Does It Hurt?" And where does it hurt basically means, where does it hurt when you see an LGBTI person? When you see a gay person, do you lose sight? Do your ears all of a sudden get blocked? Does your heart beat a little bit more? And the reality of the matter is it really doesn't hurt. And so if it doesn't hurt, we should be able to work actively in providing platforms and services that are non-discriminatory and that are non-discriminatory and that are equal. Botswana LGBTI movement, I think we're relatively young, in as we develop. We're finding our voice, we're finding our space. And once again, we're learning from South Africa. I think we know that currently Botswana, South Africa, are two of some of the countries in Africa where a lot of people visit because they know that the laws protect LGBTI persons. I think there's a lot that we can still do as a movement. There's a lot that we can still learn as a movement. But I think where we are right now is that we're working really hard to educating the public about who we are, educating the public about what our story is, educating the public about how we demand or how we'd like to be treated. And I think showing our contribution to the community, that Botswana is not just about a few people. Botswana is about each and every person. And so everyone deserves to be given the space to live freely, given the space to enjoy their lives, given the space to be who they are without fear of stigma, fear of discrimination. We know in many African countries, people can't even walk out of the house as LGBTI persons because they're afraid and questioning themselves, will we be coming back? And like I said, while we have done good, there have been pockets of violations and human rights inconsistencies that continue to happen to LGBTI persons. But the community is standing out, the community is showing up to share their stories, showing up to share their experiences. We are holding our policy and leaders accountable. Just right now, currently, we are in the process of developing a national key population strategy. And just, I think last month, we were in South Africa through the office of the National Agenda Commission in South Africa to learn from South Africa in terms of how we can be able to put in LGBTI issues as part of gender, as part of human rights, and really issues of humanity fundamentally. So it's a lot of work that we can do, but I think the work that we have done, there has been great progress, there has been development, and we're seeing more and more LGBTI persons speaking out. When I was growing up, I didn't have many LGBTI persons to look up to. There were very few in Botswana. It was, the Kenyan man. It was Shanti Lo, who's an artist. It was very few people. And so we had to find ourselves. But obviously, we learned from a lot of people in South Africa who were already openly LGBTI. What we are currently doing now is to create a positive imaging and story of what it means to be LGBTI persons. Because while we go through stigma, while we go through discrimination, while we go through all forms of violations, there is still a story of hope that we can tell. There's still a story of perseverance that we can tell. There's still a story of resilience of where we're coming from and where we're going. And we are hoping that the younger generation of LGBTI persons, of human rights defenders, can be able to see that, yes, there is violation, yes, there is this and that, but there is also a reason to leave because the environment is allowing. I think that's where we are right now. A lot has been done, but a lot more can be done. LGBTI persons are coming out. Parents are coming out to say my child is gay and I will support my child. Religious leaders are coming out to say, I will speak out for the LGBTI persons in the community. And one of the things that we have been doing is to say everyone has a right to live their lives as they want, but also everyone has a right to religion. So as umfundisi or as, a traditional healer, whoever that you are, what you identify with, you have the right to your opinion. What we are more than anything encouraging is to say, let's find a bridge of how do we coexist together. with your religion, with your belief? How do we live together? Because we're here and this is our country together. So how do we live without stigma and discrimination? How do we live without making anyone feel less of a human? The President of Botswana, His Excellency Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi, has been very clear about his position in terms of LGBTI person, and his position is clear that everyone has a right to enjoy Botswana. And so no one should be making anyone feel less of a human being because they're LGBTI persons. He's clear in terms of the protection of LGBTI persons. The Botswana Police Services has recently established a gender and child protection unit, which is fundamentally around or set up to fast track issues of gender in terms of violence and response. And one of the key areas that they're looking at is ensuring LGBTI persons are able to be respected. LGBTI person and cases of LGBTI persons and violence are fast-tracked and are dealt in the manner that they deserve. And through my office as a gender commissioner, I have been engaging greatly with the police, greatly with different structures of the government to ensure that LGBTI persons are seen, LGBTI persons are heard, and not in just a tokenism kind of style or approach, but the issues of LGBTI persons are mainstreamed across each and every work that we do, in terms of poverty or elevating poverty, in issues of employment, in issues of health, in issues of social protection, in issues of justice, in issues of youth, LGBTI persons and everywhere. And it is one of the things that I hope when my 5-year term as a commissioner comes to an end, I would have achieved. It's not easy because we're working with people who have their own beliefs and opinions. But like I've been saying, the community, and really what I'm thinking is that you don't have to change your opinion. You don't have to change your belief, but you have to change how you treat people. When does your religion stop and you treat somebody as an equal, regardless of how they identify and how they choose to live their lives? I think that's where we are, a small movement. A lot of work has been done. A lot more can be done. And just to say, South Africa, please keep doing the great stuff so that we can be able to constantly benchmark, learn, but also show our government and our people that it can be done, it is done, and we can provide better livelihoods and for people. I really hope that in the future we can have a platform like this where you've put key stakeholders in decision makers and policy makers to have something that might seem small, but that is really big in advancing rights of equality, of inclusion, and for the rights of people. In the interest of time, I will stop here. I know you have a whole day packed activity. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope I was audible and that you see me. And just in conclusion to say, I know sometimes this camera don't give us, a better look. I promise you, I look better in person. I'm lovely. And I hope to see all of you in future, and I wish you a great deliberation. But thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for showing us that it can be done and that our voices can be heard. Our voices are valued and our stories deserve to be heard in authentic African Botswana queer voices. Thank you so much. Kaleboga, siyabonga, bye, donkey. Can be heard, our voices are valued, and our stories deserve to be heard in authentic African Botswana queer voices. Thank you so much. Kaleboga, siyabonga, bye, donkey. Can be heard, our voices are valued, and our stories deserve to be
Honorable Kaya, can I allow you to introduce Dr. Ellen Carter?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Dr. Ellen Carter. Dr. Ellen Carter is an accomplished legal professional serving as a provincial manager of South African Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape. As an admitted and accredited mediator, she has dedicated her career to promoting access to justice for marginalized communities. She boasts both with several academic, professional, and leadership accolades, and has presented on local, regional, and international platforms on issues relating to the rights of vulnerable groups. She is currently pursuing studies on the intersection between human rights and developing technologies. Dr. Ellen, can you please wait? Thank you very much. And also, Chair, I have also missed Sibonele, Nanana, Trowa. Sibonelo. Sibonelo. Galubulise nje. Thank you very much, and my apologies. Usbonelo is currently employed by Out LGBT Well-being. Usbonelo has vast NGO experiences in organizational work. They have served on many platforms within the LGBTI sector. They are currently the provincial co-chair for the task team on hate crimes for LGBTI persons. They are passionate about queer work in the mental health and advocacy environment. They have a lot of knowledge in policy work and are very passionate about mental health support. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you, Honorable Kaya. We will now call on Mrs. Steve Litsike, National LGBTQIA+ Task Team. Your time is 10 minutes. Proceed.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Molweni,
Yeway.
dumelang. Good morning. Goeiemorgen. Program Director, let me give thanks for this most important session. Let me send greetings to honorable MECs who are here with us, the Speaker and Deputy Speaker, members of Legislature here in the Eastern Cape, Municipal Council Speaker, and representatives of municipal councils, Chapter 9 institutions representatives that are here. Let me send greetings to my co-fellows. I hear LGBTQIA is pronounced differently these days, but I think we have to be patient and understanding. But these are representatives of NGOs, allied civil society members, government officials, and also members of the National Task Team that is here. Colleagues, it is important today that we learn something easy. You know, in school, they say if you cannot pronounce the acronyms, you know, these days there's a lot of acronyms, everything, everywhere. Call the name in full, it becomes easy. I'll give an example. You know, in the public health threat, there's a term used or acronym used, it's MSM. For those who knows or who works in the health space, it's making reference to men who have sex with men. But I've been in sessions, people, you know, go from MSM to SMS, MMS, and now even with the LGBT, because it's a long acronym, and I understand, Honorable Kaya, it's a very long acronym that at times the easier way to learn it is to call it in full and say lesbian, gay, bisexual,
Sexual,
transgender,
transgender,
intersex,
intersexual,
queer,
queer,
and asexual
asexual.
community. It's quite important to call it in full, because once you get used to it in full, it's very easy to say LGBTIQ plus community. And I'm saying this with importance. It's not, I think I heard the speaker said, oh no, it's long. I actually took offense. And I'll tell you why I took offense. Because this is how we neglect prioritizing communities. Because it's long, this is how we're more likely to run a risk of, putting people at the last. And this is how LGBTI people, for the longest time, they've been neglected. Because it's a long acronym. There's an assumption that we must stop. And this assumption that they look at Steve and say, LGBTI. I can't be LGBTI on my own. I possibly just represent one letter of the community. This acronym represents multiple identities, social construction, and sex characteristics of individuals whose rights are protected. So I'm really hoping those who are struggling with the acronym, with the understanding of human sexuality, there are many LGBT organizations that are here. They offer what we call human sexuality or sensitization trainings. Take a chance, take a moment, embark in the journey so that when we say people of this country, we will represent people in all their diversities without belittling or undervaluing others. So, Program Director, I thought it's necessary because this is the LGBTIQA plus dialogue. Some 101 is needed at times. But I want to commend the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, and I want us to give the Provincial Legislature a round of applause. You have brought all of us here today, and you've brought us for one reason. And this reason is aligned to the quote of a woman who was brought up here. She may not have been born here in Eastern Cape, but she was brought up here. She was born in Limpopo, which is Umama Charlotte Maxeke. So today's gathering is linked to the quote that means that the Eastern Cape is breaking this barrier of leaving no one behind. And what is it that Mama Charlotte Maxeke said? She said that this work, it is not for ourselves. Kill that spirit of self and do not live above the people. And if you can rise, bring some with you. And this is exactly what the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature is doing. It is killing the spirit of self and rising with all people. And it's also in line with what has been known to many of us across the country. What is known Eastern Cape to be reowned as the birth province of globally recognized and respected liberation struggle icons. You gave birth to people who fought for liberation. It is your task as the Eastern Cape to continue liberating each and every person, everywhere they are. You must hold it with pride. You must show the rest of the country, you must show the rest of the region why it is important to liberate everyone, everywhere they are, and it does not matter how and who they associate with. You must follow the steps of these liberation struggle heroes that put the work ahead of their own interest. They left that legacy, and that legacy must continue in that way. So this dialogue, that is the first for the Eastern Cape. I was talking with Medlamini from the Department of Justice to say that it is actually the first dialogue, and it's impressive to see this turnout. I know some other provinces have led, you are only led by Gauteng. I think Gauteng has had at least about 4 LGBTI parliamentary sessions of this nature. So now we will be looking at Eastern Cape and Gauteng, who's keeping it forward, because others are coming behind you. I can tell you that. So if you keep it up, we will know that we are uplifting Eastern Cape to be the province that it is, and that we know a rise in that. Program Director, this initiative responds also to quite a number of competing challenges. And these challenges relate to the lived reality of LGBTI people. We've seen a rise of anti-rights and anti-gender movement. This is a global phenomenon, and it must be understood in that manner. People are challenging laws, people are challenging equality, people are challenging the idea of what constitutes the rights of women, the rights of LGBTI persons, the rights of people, native nations, indigenous communities. And if we can look into issues from an intersectional lens, we will understand that democracy is under threat. We will understand that the rights and freedoms of people are under threat. And by the way, you know this, that if I, as a black lesbian woman, is not free, including yourself, wherever you are not free. So until all of us are free, nobody is free. And it is what constitutes the past history of understanding why women in 1956 marched. 67 years later, you and I are still talking gender equality. Why many of us as black people, we're still talking equality, that many black people are still not liberated. It cannot be a matter of a few. We want people to be liberated where they are. And this is why it matters even for LGBTI people to be free. And the multiple struggles that LGBTI people continue to face must be understood around the issues that we are faced with. Here in Africa, our motherland, over 60% of countries in the region still criminalize homosexual act. We've heard from Botswana, our colleague there. Botswana was amongst the recent countries that decriminalized. But I think there's been progress. We've seen Botswana, we've seen Mozambique, we've seen Angola, we've seen Seychelles that have decriminalized. But we've seen problematic countries. And which are those problematic countries? Countries like Uganda. We know President Museveni passed an anti-homosexual law that seeks to erase people. That law is a draconian law. It's not just about criminalization, but where it calls for death penalty, just for people to be who they are, seeks to erase people. So we are in the era of erasure. We are now even erase people that we don't even want to give rights, that every human being is entitled to just by virtue of being human. And now we are becoming liberators, and in fact those liberators have now become oppressors of today. We must be worried about what is happening. But why I'm lifting this, and why it matters for provinces like Eastern Cape and a country like South Africa. So while we are a great example to the global discourse, everywhere we go, the Constitution is hailed. It's a beacon of hope. I mean, South Africa is the first country in the whole world to to actually, in the Constitution, include the word sexual orientation and gender in the whole world. And I think we must comment why this is important. Other countries that people will hear, you know, LGBTI, it's a Western agenda. Even in Europe, even in America, did not surpass us. We understood the multiple struggle. And we must own this leadership we've provided in the world, and we cannot turn against that. So what we saw that happen in Gqeberha, about that shop, which I want to commend the Chapter 9 institution, the Human Rights Commission, for that judgment that said that shop must pay 500,000 because it's a damage. In fact, that 500,000 is little. We should have even shut down that shop, because we must never entertain or promote any kind of hate in our country. Our history of prejudice, our history of intolerance should teach us that. And it is my recommendation to the Eastern Cape Legislature. You have the power. You are policymakers. End discrimination in Eastern Cape. End violence in Eastern Cape. End stigmatization in Eastern Cape. That power is in your hands. So when we talk about LGBTI people, the global data makes reference and says that at least between 10 to 20% of the population is openly LGBTI. Angikhulumi nga closeted ke. I'm just saying openly, like me, like Klassen, like Sibonelo, like many of us are openly LGBTI persons. So we need to understand that those who are in the closet, they lead life of secrecy, but we are not asking for people to go, come out and whatsoever. It's upon your own space, time. It's for you to be yourself anywhere you are, but that you do not face any kind of discrimination. Now today, in this dialogue, we've got a number of topics. Program Director, these topics are critical. We are going to be focusing, of course, on hate crimes, gender-based violence, and we must never separate this kind of conversation from the idea of peace and security, because it's important. If we live in fear, it disrupts our peace and security. And it is this country that has a national action plan on peace and security. Now, NCOP, Busi, I'm sure will talk about that, currently has a bill, hate crimes and hate speech bill. And we are hoping this be passed. Remember, we were discriminated because of the color of our skin as black people this way, white people that way. We know racial issues in this country. So we must end this. Now, that bill must be passed so that we can ensure that the criminal procedure in our country can be complemented with addressing the biasness and motive of this. And the hate crimes issues is not separated from the pandemic that we have, gender-based violence and femicide, because that's exactly what we have. Some of the cases that came from Eastern Cape in the National Task Team, we know a transgender woman who was murdered, brutally so, because the murders are not just somebody who's hitting you or shooting you, whatever. Now we chop people's bodies and we bury them, and our homes become cemeteries. Yeah? Yet LGBTI bodies and our own bodies are sites of struggle. And those who don't know, we are saying that our bodies are a criminal or crime scene. Because whenever you look at a case of LGBTI, somebody has been violated. Whenever you look at a case of women who have been raped, the body, it's a site of struggle, it's a crime scene. Today we'll also look into topics around health and HIV. I must indicate that the health issue, 21% of LGBTI people in South Africa are still discriminated in health facilities. MECs, we do want to make sure that health facilities become spaces where people can access quality health care without discrimination. We don't want to walk into a facility and people say, hey, Chomi, how are you? I want to lend Chomi. We want to walk into a facility and somebody is prepared to actually provide competent, quality services and ask relevant questions. Easy example. When you see a man or somebody who's characterized with masculinity, people ask you and assume that you are married to a woman. But tata, unjani umfazi ekhaya? How do you know? Awumazi lo muntu. You just saw them for the first time and you're assuming ukuthi unemfazi ekhaya. Or ubona umama angena awu so assume ke ukuthi awu mama uphi utata ekhaya. Wangamlethanga. So those kind of binary questions are limiting and you are going to miss even those who do not identify as LGBTI, but you will not cater for the right services. Key population is a most critical part of our national strategic plan. Deputy President Paul Mashatile launched in March this year a national strategic plan 2023 to 2025. And that plan responds to the biggest pandemic. South Africa is the highest pandemic. 8.1 million people living with HIV in this country. And key population include men who have sex with men, transgender individuals, which we must make sure that our services cater for that. So health is important. Let's eliminate stigma and discrimination and get the right messaging, the right communication. So I'm not saying there are no heterosexual people. I'm just saying let's be inclusive in our approach. The posters we see in clinics, we see a mom, dad, nuclear family, né? Mom, dad, children, 2 dogs, and 2 cats there. But we want to also say, put a nuclear family picture, but put 2 women, or 2 men, or single families. Our family definition in the country, or the character of family institutions in our country is so diverse. And we cannot only limit it to mom, dad. Even our household. Let me see, you were in social development. You know our household, we have children-headed household, granny-headed households. So that idea of understanding the family is not limited to this. Family is intentional to those who are prepared to care for the others. And that unity must not be divided by the nature of politics of how we identify. The other topic that is quite key that will be discussed, and I think it's one critical, we always believe education. It's a powerful tool. I want to say 47% of LGBTI people in the country are discriminated in school. Now let me give you a problem for this. It means that you're going to experience what we call a dropout. For those who don't understand, if I'm going to be discriminated, I'm more likely not to come back to school. Drop out. And then what does it mean? It means that I'm going to now be exposed to vulnerable activities, substance use and abuse, depression, trauma, suicide, all of these issues. So if we don't look at the impact, and it's not only the issue of what happens to this youthfulness, it means that the livelihood of this person is going to drop because they will not have opportunities for work. They will not have opportunities to lead a life of prosperity. So we must expand our thinking into that. I want to also say to you that the National Department of Basic Education has now approved a SOGI policy. SOGI, which is sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression policy in schools. This was just in the last 24 hours. And I think it's impressive by DBE for that. The last 2 points that are critical. All these discussions that we are going to be discussing, from hate crimes and so forth, we must think about it. What does it mean for our country? From an economic point of view, right now we are suffering triple threat issues: poverty, unemployment, and inequalities. When LGBTI people are excluded, or when women are excluded, anyone who's left out, there's an impact on economy. For those who understand the buying power of LGBTI people, from a GDP point of view, LGBTI people has over 200 billion buying power. Okay, we do advance. I mean, we have a lot of problems, but we are achievers. We strive for that. And those who want to dim our light, we don't allow, and we will shine. So it's quite important to understand that even in difficulties, there's a buying power, which constitutes 8% of our GDP. So if you don't see this change going, it means we're going to lose out on this buying power. That means that our economy will be on a loss. So it's scientific. Let's do best to restore just approach in society. Let's do well to ensure democracy is safeguarded. Those who fought before us, those who organized before us, must ensure that we don't squander the freedom. And that freedom is for all members of society, is everybody. President Ramaphosa has emphasized on these points of making sure that South Africa is for all. And Eastern Cape, this year, you have led and you have shown this power. And I want to say congratulations for that. And we hope this deliberation will bring us closer to winning as a country, because Eastern Cape will be leading. Thank you.
Can we call now Mr. Sibonele Nganana, Provincial Task Team on Hate Crimes? You are having 15 minutes. Fifteen minutes, okay, Mr. Sibonele.
Okay, I'll try. Steve, I think we Keyonke. There's not much I could say, but Molweni, Kamako, Sanbonani, and is it still morning? Yeah. Mora.
Yes.
Angihambi ke ngedwa. Sibonelo wakancanana uhamba noncanana omgabadelo onkundla babulawayo. Ngiphinde ningahambi ngedwa ngihambe nochawa. Anibazi kochawa bakabani ne? But ke that's usibonelo. Steve, thank you so much. I think we young, so I won't dwell in other things that you have touched on. But I would like to thank this House firstly for having this. It makes me quite emotional that I am standing here today, knowing the struggles that this province has been through for us to get here. So I would like to say thank you also to the speaker. I was listening to the speaker when she was having a radio interview with SAFM, I think the night before yesterday. For me, it made me even more emotional how she spoke of the rights of the LGBTI persons living within this province. How this House saw us as important, how this House did not see us as the other, but when she spoke as we. For me, it felt like a parent was talking. And I think this House should feel like a parent. It should be a place where one could access easily. It should be a place where one doesn't fear approaching this House when seeking safety, when seeking refuge. The Eastern Cape has been dubbed before as the most homophobic province in this country. I think that picture has changed. And I think the Eastern Cape should be proud. And I think the queer people in this house, the queer people who are out, like Steve has said, who put their bodies in the front line to advocate for the rights of others who might not advocate for themselves, should be proud of themselves because they have changed the narrative of the Eastern Cape. Now, the narrative of the Eastern Cape is that it is rural, it has traditional leaders, it is a dire situation, and that's not the real picture of the Eastern Cape, and I would like to paint that picture before I come to challenges. This house has got an advantage because there are departments, for example, the Department of Justice in this province, which is in the forefront for fighting for the rights of the LGBTI or the queer community. This house is fortunate because it has traditional leaders, and I'm going to say this because I'm proud of this. We have traditional leaders where we could say Tata, Mama, Nkosi, from Alfred Nzo, from Emampondweni, Ngolibote, who say, I fight for the LGBTI rights, who stand up and say, Akosta ba nasala phela linyam esizawuhlukunyezwa. So this house has got that advantage, but this house also has got an advantage because we have Chapter 9 institutions which lead. Dr. Carter, your department is like a safe house where when we know there's no place to go, we go we knock on your door. But also CGE has played a big role in this province when it comes to advancing the rights of the LGBTI persons. But having counted the departments, there have been people who have fought or who we stand on their shoulders. People like Uphiwe Ncengi, who put her body until the last days of her life fighting for the rights of the LGBTI persons. So I stand there in this podium also on the shoulders of Simon Goli, where Simon Goli talks about not being able to separate his blackness or their queerness from each other because they are interlinked. My blackness and my struggle in this economy are interlinked with my queerness. Because if I can't access a job, like we had Mr. O, sorry, I call him Mr. O, the gentleman who spoke from Botswana. When I can't access a job, when I can't play a role in the economy, when I can't contribute that 2 billion that Steve talked about, it makes me feel worthless. But also, I stand on the shoulders of Sally Gross, the former director of Intersex South Africa. We have made amatalas, or we have made intersex people disappear. We don't see them in our families. We don't see them in the service delivery programs. We don't even see them in Home Affairs. Like, it would be so nice if I was intersex and see my ID written intersex, counting me, because this is my sexual characteristics. It is not something that I chose. It is something which I was assigned at birth. But also, I stand on the great shoulders of Nelson Tata Rolihlahla Mandela when I stand here, who says, it might seem impossible until it is done. Today, that has been proven. I did not foresee this. I did not foresee this 5 months from now, before we got here. So there is a great there is a great foundation in the Eastern Cape that has been set by the great women who were born and raised in this beautiful province. And when I say women, I include all women. And when I say women, I include women also who do not have vaginas. I include all women. So because I have 15 minutes, I'm now jumping to the issues or the challenges that we are currently facing. Steve has spoken about this global phenomena of people trying to erase people. I would have really liked this house if we could have really invited somebody from Uganda, if we could have invited somebody from Ghana, if we could have invited somebody from Tanzania. Because they also, even living in this province, they're not even that far because they had to run away from home and seek refuge in this province. Now, what are the challenges when it comes to this? 88% of LGBTI persons do not report hate crimes. And this research was funded by the Love Not Hate program, and it was also done here in the Eastern Cape. What does that mean when I say 88% do not report hate crimes? It means that there are people sitting, most of LGBTI persons, who will never go to a police station because they don't feel safe. When they go to police stations like the Motherwell police station, they are turned around and say, we don't serve LGBTI persons in this police station. They go to police stations where their cases just disappear, and they are just closed like that. So that is what we are facing in the Eastern Cape. We face religious leaders who think that another person is not important above their religion, that their religion is so important that it should erase someone else, where they even talk about violence in the name of God, where they talk about taking someone out or removing them or removing their rights in the name of God. We have a problem in the Eastern Cape of not having LGBTI programs which are visible and which the LGBTI sector supports and understands. Most of the time we are invited when we see iyaphela ngoku financial year. Yabo next year February kuzoba khona zonke izinto exciting for LGBTI. Isuke siphela ke lapha ibudget. But before iphela ibudget, say kufe abantu abangaka. How many people have committed suicide who have been chased away from schools? Not so far away, here in Mtanzani, not so long ago, a school teacher, a principal, outed lesbian children out in the public. What does that say? It means that that lesbian child, when she's walking home, or that female child, when they are walking home, they could be victimized. We know what happens to women in South Africa. We know how unsafe women are. Those kids are now put out there to be raped, paraded out there, to be their self-esteem to be broken down, and to be called a sin. I don't understand what is a sin by loving someone. Where is a sin by showing love and affection to someone else? I think a sin is somebody who is homophobic. But also, I would like also to mention that there has been progress also within the office of the Premier. China, I know when I talk about the office of the Premier, we might laugh, but there's been progress. The Eastern Cape had also its first LGBTI Pride last year. And I hope the office again takes it up this year, because that was a step in the right direction. For me, I saw progress. I saw progress in the office saying, sector, come, let's sit and let's have a pride. Because most of the time, people understand pride as if it's a party where we wear G-strings and become sexual. And that's not what pride is. Pride is pride. It's about Sibonelo being there and being proud of who Sibonelo is. So in closing, I would like this sitting to come up with solutions, to come up with programs that involve every LGBTI persons. Not LGBTI persons who are in good or powerful political spaces, not LGBTI onlys who sit in NGOs, but even the LGBTI person far away. So with saying that, I would also like to thank the district organizers or the district LGBTI leaders in this house. You have played a big role in us getting to where we are today. We might not say it, and some people might not say it, but you have played a big role in putting your bodies in the forefront and fighting for the rights of people in those rural, small communities. So I hope, Speaker, and this House, that people like the shop owner in Gqeberha, that people like the principal in Mtanzane, that people who think that an LGBTI person's life is not worthy, we will have legislation that would govern to stop that. I hope LGBTI persons will be protected by this House, and I hope that one day a person in the Eastern Cape who is queer will not feel the fear going to a shop, will not have a fear to go to work, will not have fear of losing their job, will not have a fear of going to a job interview just because of how they identify or how they express themselves or how or how their characteristics were assigned at birth. With that, House, I thank you. And also thank you to the organizers of this. I am really, really thankful for having this. So thank you to everybody, and big ups to the queer community up there. Be proud of yourselves. And with the last words are from Sally Cross. Sally Cross, I had the pleasure of meeting Sally Cross, and she explained why she said this. Sally Cross says, it gets better. For me, it didn't make sense, but I had an opportunity of meeting and asked, what gets better? Because at that time, I didn't see anything better. But she said, it gets better if you participate in the structures within your community. It gets better if you are responsible for your rights and stand up for your rights. It will not get better if you don't do that. So to the queer community, it can only get better if you are responsible and take responsibility for your rights and claim them. Thank you to the House.
Mama Uno China Skepe. Una 15 minutes.
I'm going to take 5.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Greetings to everyone in the House. I feel like crying right now because everything that I have prepared, Steve has touched on, and Bonello has touched on. But I will. It's gonna be like I'm playing a recording, but I will try again not to bandini bore. Okay. ICAC has sectors that form part of CSF. So the LGBTI sector is one of those sectors who form part of CSF in ICAC space. I would like to compliment the organizations and the departments that we are working with in the province. Your Department of Social Development, they have played a huge role in assisting us addressing the issues of HIV and access to treatment in the LGBTI community. And also working with the Secretariat, Mr. Daile's office, and the chairperson of the civil society, Mr. Luciti Melikaya. They have supported us a lot. As Usbonelo have mentioned that last year we hosted a provincial pride. Our pride was more of sharing of information. And we know that when we attend prides, we go for dancing, sisele, siyo abuse alcohol. But last year it was totally different to prides that we used to have. So I also like to compliment the legislature and the team who organized this event, because they created a very safe space for us. And I'm happy that amongst this house, within this house, there are SPU members who are going to take this initiative to the local areas, because we can't have a provincial activity without having work in the ground. So guys, siyacela bethuna nisamnandelwa ukubhukelwa nizolala emashitini amhlophe ni honorishe le event. Go to the ground, niqokelela abantu ngohlobo abaqokelelwe ngalo legislature, because asihlali kwi province, these participants are from the ground and they are suffering from the ground. When it comes to access to treatment, we have a lot of challenges when we go to health facilities. One, the stigma in the security, with the security guards at the gate. It's even hard to enter if you belong to this community, because security sikujaja usangena phi gate sichinje even the tone ungekafiki emanesini. Then even though HIV South Africa isaziwa into basele into buqheleka, but when it comes to LGBTI, it's always ingati intsha, because there's that stigma, Steve, esithi HIV yeza ne LGBTIs and sayithatha kwinkawu andiyazi kuba ihambe iphelele phi lonto. So yenza ke lonto into ba singathandeki ncam nakwi facilities. Then discrimination and violence kwi health facilities zilimita chances zokuba abantu ba access i-services. As ba Steve ebeke mentioned into eti, we don't like to be addressed as uchocho. If in your area there's someone who loves to be addressed as uchocho, not all of us siyatanda uba kuthiwe chocho. And indlela yokubuza relevant questions. I can't ngena consulting room. Ndingena sele undibuza into how do I engage with sex? Those questions zenza into yoba ndingabaweli ukuphinde ndibuyele kuwe. The other thing that eyenza into yobana kube nzima uaccessa i-services leaders, more especially chairpersons, we have to teach our members on how to lodge a complaint and how to write a suggestion. In our facilities, there are clinic cards with colors. So we are asking, if ungena phaya, you identify yourself as a man or a woman. Ikhadi lakho should be pink, uba ungumfazi, libe ngu purple or green, blue if uyindoda. Not everyone ubelonga okanye une gender identity, because identity you need to identify yourself. I choose to be usis no china. Should I correct honorable chair? I don't like to be addressed as Mamu no China, no China without Mama ekuqaleni or Mama at the end. So kufuneka alandele lonto. Lando ke yokuba unikwe ikhadi elingahambelani nawe, idrawa iattention kwi-community nakwabanye abantu abaze accessa i-services, because baba nento ethi, all right ufakele weave. Siyakwazi ndoba you were assigned as male at birth, but now you are wearing high heels and weave. But your card is akuphindisela back that wena you were assigned as male, nobungaze uzi identify as a woman. So yenzela nto uba kube nzima into ba abantu bayo accessa i-services. And siyacela into bana ke i-legislature isebenzisane nathi kakhulu to fast track i-policies ezikolweni, because bakhona abantwana basezikolweni who are taking i-hormonal therapy, abathi xa beyisebenzisa la treatment ichinje i-features zebody yabo, then umntana aendapheke ngoku seyifuna nokunxiba i-uniform ehambelana naye. So ufumanisa uba abantwana kwezi drop-outs esithetha ngazo bayaphuma esikolweni because abakho accommodated and badiscriminatwa ziitishala, bediscriminatwa nangabantwana besikolo. I would also like to compliment amakhosi emakhaya. Siyazi uba amakhosi ngabona abantu ba-stubborn kakhulu when it comes to LGBTI. But amakhosi eselesebenze nawo, Alfred Nzo, naselibode, naselisikanyana nje ke phayana. So they supported us a lot because bayawazi umthetho wase South Africa ukuba uthini na. As much as babe ngamakhosi abahambeli kude kumthetho wase South Africa. And when sisenza sensitization trainings, there are parts phayana ezithetha nge-sexual practices. So sinosibonelo, we used to jump or to skip that part of sexual practices because how part uyenza kanjani. So amakhosi ase Alfred Nzo wona they wanted that part because bafuna ukuyazi into ba i-HIV ingena kanjani ibe seyithini xa kutheni, so that bayofundisa i-communities zabo. So to everyone olapha ndiyacela into yobana njengoba kuzawuyiwa kwi-discussions sithethe ngolwimi lwethu esi-comfortable ngalo. Ndiyakwazi ukukhumsha nam but ndithanda into yoba sithetheni ukuze sivakale, because abantu baba ne-tendency Steve yokuba beze kwi-events bathule because beve sikhumsha kakhulu baphele bengakwazi ukuvoice out izinto ezibefana babazithetha. Feel free to thetha uthi Steve u-A no B no C uhamba kanje nakanje, akho mntu uzojaja. isiXhosa is one of the official languages. Enkosi.
Enkosi kakhulu ukugxininisa kulo mcimbi we-languages. Si-Eastern Cape Legislature sathatha isindululo sokubana out of 11 official languages ingeke ngezwa ke le 12 ye-sign language ezizipha kwi-constitution, thina apha sine-languages eziyi-4 esizisebenzisayo: isiXhosa, isiSuthu, i-English, i-Afrikaans. So you are free to express yourself ngalo hlobo ufuna uzi-expressa ngalo. as babe sichilo into bana interpretation channels zeziphi na. Also kulomba we SPUs bendike ndimane ndijonga ke apha eyandazi Deputy Chief Whip District Gqitha umane ndijonga ndike ndambona uCouncillor uNyembezi from Imatatiel local municipality kwa SPU section. I mean nguye ojongene nala section akwa SPU, hoping that ke Joe Gqabi nani eyenu khona apha as well as other municipalities, ngoba inyani le into ba ekugqibeleni kufuneka kuyosetyenzwa pha on the ground kwi-masses zicacelwe kakuhle zizo zonke ezi zinto besizithetha apha nale njongo yale dialogue. Kamnandi ndiyababona ke no speaker abakhona apha because i-public participation ipha kweza offices zabo. Masidlule ke sicele umama wendlu yenkosi apha Eastern Cape, Eastern Cape House of Traditional Leaders, umama unkosikazi uSiphiwe Mhlambiso. Una 15 minutes nawe mama. Kodwa ukuba ezinye sezithethiwe awuziphindi uyawuvele mhlambi na ubethe ngo5 or 10. Thank you.
Enkosi mhlanga phambili. Hayi usiso suka pha sekayigqibile. Njengoba ethetha bendingafana abantu basathetha nothetha. Mandizibulisele kumama ophethe inkqubo, ndizibulisele kuye wonke umuntu olapha endlini. Mandingabi saphozisa amaziko. Mandingene emxholeni. Program Director, the House appreciate to the invited in the sensitive and important topic like the one we are discussing here today. One hopes that resolution and commitment we are going to make here are to cascade it to our people on the ground. We need to change the stereotypes around LGBTQIA+. Program Director, there is a freedom of choice and association in our country, and we should not dare infringe on the constitutional rights of any intolerant and hate against anyone should be condemned in the strongest way possible. We need to educate our people about accepting that we are different and that we should not be apologetic about that. We need to embrace the support one another. As people, we need to live in a society where there will be no reference to one's gender, race, but we should just be a people. Traditional leadership is well aware of changing times. We live in and how we need to adapt the order in order to accept one another as a human being. All traditional leaders have been mobilized to engage the community about protecting from from violence and hate against the LGBTQIA+. Community, it is an ongoing process, and more education is needed so that it can be a way of life to live in peace and harmony. So partnership are needed so that we can have outreach program in harmony in a rural area, and that way even those who are in hiding will be able to come out. We need to encourage our family to support their children and to protect them all the time. We need to go to school and promote tolerance amongst peers because young people can be brutal. We are going to mobilize members of the House of Initiate Education Program on the subject matter, both provincial and local house. We commit to have this item in all community imbizo, traditional council meetings, and the community gathering, even in funerals. As a traditional leader, we take this issue very much important because they have been reported cases of hate against members of LGBTQIA+. Community, and it has divided our community. So one way of promoting social cohesion and oneness amongst our people is to enlighten members of the society about this issue without fear. So we propose that an action plan be developed and that all the spheres of government, this matter should discuss robustly, and that the message should be accepted of our people unconditionally. So it should not be just a talk show, but we need to have ambassadors who are going to work closely with LGBTQIA+ in community. They cannot be on their own, so all traditional leaders, religious grouping, politicians, citizens must all join hands, declare war against all forms, GBVF and LGBT communities, and that way we'll live in a society with living. I thank you.
Kunomtu olahle le iPad. Okay. Now let me introduce the chairperson of the second segment, our Honorable Nomvano Zibonda, who is also a member of the CWP executive. Over to you, Honorable Zibonda.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chair of Chairs. Let me take this opportunity to ndibulise wonke umuntu olapha endlini. Amalungu LGBTQIA+ community, amalungu endlewiso mthetho, the mayors and the representations from all local municipalities. Let me take this opportunity and greet all of you. I now call on the MEC for Social Development, Honorable Bukiwe Fanda, to come and respond to the debates. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Directors, Honorable Makubela, Nama Musbonda, Speaker, Nesekela Kebel Kona up, all our honorable members present here, our host, abantwana bethu, kwale nyanga yomama, inyanga that we are proud of, the community that we are working with and we have this program today, LGBTQIA+, our social partners, and the guests connected from various social media platforms. Inkosi zezula kwethu, troikas from different municipalities present here. Nakuye wonke umuntu okhona apha. Ndithi ndivumeleni ndithi kunebhotane molweni. I greet you all. Allow me to express my appreciation to be part of this august occasion, which seeks to shape and advance transgender and intersex policies for the province of the Eastern Cape as a whole. In the same vein, I want to acknowledge that this debate takes place where we are commemorating Women's Month, a sector that has been hard hit by a plethora of challenges, including poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This sector really needs a special focus, particularly in view of the escalating social ills such as GBV and F, violence, and other social crimes in our communities. As Steve Echilo, that our mother, Mama Kleke, who fought for us, our forebear, who walked this road for us when days were dark, but she said, we must kill the spirit of self. We are here today to fight that spirit of self and respect all. We gather here today under the theme, Entrenching the Rights of Freedom of Sexual Orientation, a nation free of gender discrimination and hate crimes. Program Director Mamusbonda, our country follows a rights-based approach. This means that government have 3 levels of obligations, namely to respect, to protect, and to fulfill rights. To respect a right means refraining from interfering with enjoyment of the right. To protect a right means to prevent other parties from interfering with enjoyment of rights. To fulfill a right means to take active steps to put in place laws, policies, institutions, and procedures to enable people to enjoy their rights. What we are doing here today focuses on and strengthening all 3 obligations. We are honored as this Eastern Cape Legislature, where we have moved a stride forward in trying to resolve the challenges. We know way before our province was leading in these hate crimes, but due to education that we have managed to lead as this house, kohlile noko ngoku. Hence namhlanje silapha sikwazi ukuba sibe sihleli apha sisonke ungekho umuntu ugxeka omnye. Program Director, while there have been significant strides made regarding legislative safeguards, gaps in policies and challenges with implementation still remain. Freedom, dignity, and equality go to the very heart of our constitutional democracy. As Tandisikuti, this is a constitutional right of each and everyone, a right that we fought for. Our forebears, labo, for the rights of our people. But many people are deprived of their human rights, dignity, and right to equality, and are not free to be themselves because of discrimination that they face in their lives. They face discrimination on the basis of their sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and their sexual characteristics. Allow me to just highlight some of the interventions we are implementing that seek to respond to the needs of the sector. As Department of Social Development, we are trying our level best. The Department of Social Development is mandated to lead in the coordination of services to all victims of crime and violence, that is inclusive of victims of abuse, crime, domestic violence, hate crimes, including this community that are here today that are hosting this parliament for them. Human rights, trafficking, gender-based violence, and femicide, and other forms of victimization. As mothers, ngabantwana bethu aba, asikwazi ukuzidivorsa kunye nabo.
Hence, we're here, we're saying we together, we are going to fight the hate crimes directed to our kids. Our victim empowerment program is premised on caring, supporting, and protecting all victims of crime and violence, including the direct victim, the immediate family, dependents of victims and communities, with special focus on vulnerable groups like women and children, older persons, persons with disabilities, LGBTQIA+, persons living with albinism, and victims of human trafficking. On a capacity building initiatives, the Department of Social Development, as part of the Provincial Task Team for LGBTQIA+, has an integrated plan with other stakeholders for sensitization workshop for service providers and for communities. We have conducted these sensitization workshops as DSD, residential facilities, VEP shelters, child and youth care centers, and secure care centers that is still in progress in partnership with OUT organization for the LGBTQIA+. Provision of support in terms of sensitization workshop, and this also forms part of Pillar 2 of the National Strategic Plan on GBV and F. One of the key aims of the program is to facilitate establishment of an integrated and interdepartmental and intersectoral programs and policies for support, protection, and empowerment of victims of crime and violence. On service and programs for LGBTQIA+, we have an integrated and multidisciplinary approach to service delivery by the various role players to address the diverse sector specific needs of victims, including promoting an integrated intersectoral approach to service delivery for well-being of victims. Siyabulela xa umama wethu bethetha apha esithi social development, we have improved, we have done a lot. We thank you for that acknowledgement. We are trying our level best. More so, it is one of the strategic efforts of the government to prevent crime and to create peaceful crime-free South Africa. City masithule izibhamu elizweni lonke. Masithi masithule ukufa kwabantwana bethu elizweni lonke. Sithi makuthule ukufa komama nabantwana elizweni lethu lonke. More so, it is one of the strategic efforts of government to prevent crime and to create peaceful, free South Africa. It focuses on promoting and upholding the rights of victims of crime and violence in order to prevent re-victimization with criminal justice system. We know sometimes the criminal justice system, sometimes it disappoints us, but we are going to persevere. We are not going to keep quiet. Wherever we see gaps, we are going to shout. We are going to be in those courts with our big placards picketing to say, no one must be killed because of ukuba ungubani wenza ntoni. Through the Department of Social Development, we are currently funding and supporting 161 organizations, the civil society organizations, that are providing services to all victims of gender-based violence and crime in the 8 districts of the province. These are inclusive of shelters, are expected to comply with provision of shelter services to all victims regardless of their sexual orientation, as outlined in the Intersectional Shelter Policy 2021. We are also supporting LGBTQIA+ organizations that have applied for funding for provision of services to LGBTQIA+. In conclusion, I want to quote the words of Mama Wetu Sylvia Rivera, was a transgender right activist, and some have called her the Rose Parks of modern transgender movement. I quote, "I have to be visible. We should not be ashamed of who we are. We have to show the world that we are numerous. There are many of us out there." Close quote. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Fanta. I now call on Dr. Elian Carter to speak on the role of the South African Human Rights Commission in promoting the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community in the Eastern Cape. Over to you, Dr. Carter.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Speaker, members of the House, it is indeed a privilege to be here today. And I'm echoing the sentiments of all the speakers prior to my presentation in saying that we commend the House for hosting this discussion. And we hope that it is the first of many to come. Because what we can do is we can amplify the voices which are in this room today. So, in respect of the Human Rights Commission's mandate, we are a Chapter 9 institution, which means we have been created by the Constitution. It is our duty to promote, to protect, and monitor the observance of human rights. So that we do in a manner of ways. And I'm only going to identify a few for you today to speak to the topic of the day. So for us, and to contextualize the rights base from which I am speaking, I wanted to read Section 9 of the Constitution for you. Section 9 speaks to equality, and it says, everyone is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law. Section 9 says, the state may not unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds, including gender, sex, and sexual orientation. And it goes further, and it says no person may unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds in terms of what I've just read. That is our Constitution. And in the Human Rights Commission, that is basically our baseline where we work from. So to give you a little bit of data, in the province last year, we received 667 complaints. The most were about health-related issues, and the second related to dignity, equality. And the most prevalent concern that was reported to our office relating to equality was based on sexual orientation. It is a matter that needs us to sit up straight and address and have strategies which can be developed from this House to enable us to address that. So what does one of our key pieces of legislation, the Equality Act, say, and how do we use it? Well, we look to what is being termed harassment, we look to what is called hate speech, and we look to what is called unfair discrimination when we endeavor to protect the rights of vulnerable communities. And the definitions are there. I'm not going to go too much into them. But what I want to get to, and I know we are strapped for time, is what are we doing about it? What is the Human Rights Commission doing about it? Now, in terms of our promotion mandate, we try and reach communities in advocacy. So we try not only communities, but we are trying to reach government in advocacy as well. We want to pull them in to say, this is the Bill of Rights, this is PAPUDA, and this is according to the law what we need to do in order to protect the rights of vulnerable communities. But we also have a protection mandate. And that's where I sometimes say is where our teeth is. And that's where we will not hesitate to take anyone to court who is found prima facie to be guilty of hate speech, harassment, and unfair discrimination against the LGBTIQ+ community. We've done it before. Even in this year, we took an Afrikaans singer, Mr. Hofmeyer, to task and said, you will not proliferate harassment online against this community. And Mr. Hofmeyer donated 100,000 rand towards our LGBTI in response to our allegations and matter against him. This happened in this province. So mention was made again. with respect to the Gqeberha shop owner. And colleagues, community, I want to assure you we are in court. We have requested urgent relief from court. And amongst the relief has already been mentioned this morning as 500,000 in damages, but that is not all that we are requesting. We are also requesting the National Prosecuting Authority to investigate this matter as a criminal matter. So we hope to be able to report when we get feedback and when we are indeed called for a directions hearing. As I mentioned, we will be in the High Court in Gqeberha very soon. But that's not all we do. We also hosted an investigative hearing on what we called the overregulation of school uniforms and appearances. Because I do not think that the ability of a child to do mathematics, to learn isiXhosa, Chivenda, relates to anything that that child chooses to wear, gender non-conforming or at all. Whether that child chooses to wear a dress or pants, the school should not force that child to be outed, and that child should be seeking a safe space in a school, and it should not have to relate to anything that that child chooses to wear. Our report on that is due shortly, and we will be making findings against the dress code policy of the Department of Education. Further than that, we deal with complaints. We invite you to our office. We are your commission. We engage very successfully with our departments in this province. And Honourable Fanta, you are amongst the departments in this province that give us support, that respond to our requests. So we do have an engaging executive here under the leadership of the Premier, and we will continue to engage their provinces on issues that are related to vulnerable communities. So in respect of complaints handling, where you do want to approach our offices, please do so. Our headquarters in this province is in East London. We're available online. You can contact us at any time. Because what we do with complaints is we sometimes also do ADR. And then we get an opportunity to go to the respondents, to perhaps also pull them in, because sometimes people don't know better. And we need to advocate. And we need to ensure that they've got the knowledge and the information for us to, I always say, when we know better, we do better. So when they know better, perhaps next time they'll do better. Now, in terms of interesting developments, we are very much engaged in respect of human rights and developing technologies as well. An example of a recent incident was when a child was harassed online because of the sexual orientation of his father. And that took place without moderation from the platform. So we are faced with evolving human rights abuses as well. So where we are addressing the one thing, we also need to look forward to see where we are going with this. And we need to make sure this province specifically is geared and ready for that development in terms of acknowledging technology as well. So that is what we are doing currently. That's a snapshot. And what I can tell you, we are also developing a model school code of conduct to make sure that children have a way of addressing bullying, that they can report in safe spaces. And that is our recommendation, because we will always go back to the Constitution as our baseline. We will always go back to Chapter 2, Section 9, the right to equality, but even more so, Section 10, the right to dignity. And that would be our baseline in addressing each and every matter that we deal with. So, honourable members of this House, in respect of moving forward and our recommendations, it is to say the House must support and underscore the work of the Human Rights Commission in promoting and protecting the rights of the LGBTIAQ+ community. We ask that the House recognizes and underscores the need for increased awareness on the right to equality and the prevention of unfair discrimination as called for by our domestic legislation. And we also call for the House to acknowledge the vulnerabilities of gender non-conforming learners and the need for increased advocacy amongst relevant role players to protect the rights of these children specifically. So in a nutshell, that is us. And we invite you to our offices, and we invite you to continue to support the work that we are trying to do for this community. And we thank you for the support that we are already receiving. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carter, for that profound and progressive input. I now call on Ms. Sally Ganda to respond to the debate from the United Nations Human Rights Council.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Can I just test that I can be heard well? Honourable Speaker, I'm testing whether I'm audible on your side. Honourable Speaker of the Eastern Cape Provincial Parliament, Honourable Members of the Provincial Legislature, Premier of the Eastern Cape, members of the House of Traditional Leaders, colleagues from Chapter 9 institutions, civil society organisations, all protocols observed. It's a great honour for us to be able to participate in this debate today, and I wish to extend my sincere thanks to the organisers of the important event and topic under discussion today, one that tackles one of the modern day threats to human rights, discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. The United Nations has a long history of mobilizing the world against discrimination of all kinds through wide-ranging action to defend human rights and advance the rule of law. Indeed, the very identity and establishment of the organization are rooted in the nightmare that ensues when virulent hatred is left unopposed for too long. Discussions like the discussion today are important in ensuring that any type of discrimination is not left unopposed for too long. Today, I've been asked to present on the international standards in respect of the rights of LGBTQIA+ persons and communities. In this regard, I will speak to some specific international events that have taken place at the UN level pertaining to sexual and gender minorities. And then I'll provide a brief overview of human rights standards and application in respect of the protection and promotion of the human rights of sexual and gender minorities. I've avoided naming each and every international instrument or covenant, but I'm happy to speak more on this if needed. So the UN has a long legacy of commitment to the protection of human rights, and particularly the human rights of sexual or gender minorities. From 1994, when the UN Human Rights Committee adopted views on an individual complaint related to sexual orientation, in which it found that a law in Australia that criminalized consensual same-sex relations was a violation of the human rights related to equality, non-discrimination, and privacy. If we move to 2013, the UN Human Rights Office launched the UN Free and Equal campaign. In 2016, the Human Rights Council established the mandate of the independent expert on the protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, a mandate which was renewed in 2019. There have been numerous other remarkable events that have taken place on the international stage, but I realize that I only have a short amount of time to speak today, and so I want to speak really about human rights jurisprudence at international level and state obligations. Through constant work and jurisprudence of the human rights bodies, there's been an express interpretation to include grounds of discrimination, understanding of the situation of different groups, and this includes sexual and gender minorities. Furthermore, agencies and entities in the UN system have increasingly addressed human rights issues related or relating to the human rights of LGBTIQA+ people in recent years, including through research, reports, policy briefs, awareness-raising materials, press releases, op-eds, and joint statements. In terms of state obligations, state law does not establish human rights, though it can, of course, enshrine and affirm those rights, and South Africa is a very good example of this. Human rights are inherent entitlements which come to every person simply as a consequence of being human. And so LGBTQIA+ persons and other gender non-conforming people are not an exception. Treaties and other sources of law generally serve to protect formally the rights of individuals and groups against actions or abandonment of actions which interfere with the enjoyment of their rights. And so protecting the LGBTIQ+ community and individuals from violence and discrimination does not require a new set of international human rights laws or standards. States are legally required to safeguard the human rights of all people, including the LGBTQIA+ community. This is well established in international human rights law, and it is based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as other international human rights treaties. Core legal obligations of states with respect to protecting the human rights of LGBTQIA+ persons include obligations to protect, prevent, repeal, prohibit, safeguard. And if I go into a bit of detail about each of those, under protection, the obligation is to protect individuals from violence, whether it is homophobic violence, transphobic violence. It includes sexual identity, gender identity. Or the protection aspect obligates states to include sexual identity, gender identity, and sex characteristics as protected grounds in law on hate crime, hate speech, and incitement to violence. It also obligates the state to establish effective systems to record and report such attacks, ensure due diligence in the effective investigation and prosecution of perpetrators, as well as redress for victims. And it obligates states to ensure these grounds are considered as aggravating circumstances in judgments and sentencing, and recognize that persecution on these grounds is a valid basis for asylum claims. Under the prevention aspect, states are obligated to prevent torture and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. And prevention of the torture and ill treatment of LGBTQIA+ persons includes in detention and medical settings by prohibiting such acts, repealing discriminatory laws and policies, and that are used to encourage or justify any type of torture or inhuman and degrading treatment. It also includes prohibition of genital and anal examinations, as well as degrading physical examinations that LGBTQIA+ persons and intersex persons specifically might be subjected to in detention. It calls for the prohibition of so-called conversion therapies, as well as the normalization of genital surgeries and other non-consensual medical treatments of intersex persons. It also obligates the state to investigate all acts of mistreatment by state agents and bring those responsible to justice. And it obligates that states must provide appropriate training to healthcare providers and law enforcement officers to ensure effective monitoring of places of detention. Under the repeal aspect, states are obligated to repeal laws criminalizing same-sex relations and transgender people. This means repealing laws that criminalize consensual same-sex relations, laws that criminalize the expression of gender identity, and other laws used to harass, arbitrarily detain, prosecute, and discriminate against persons on the basis of their actual or perceived gender identity or expression or sexual orientation, and to ensure that individuals are not arrested or detained on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. I'll stop here before moving on to the next 2 points to say that in many respects, South Africa has enacted a strong set of laws that start to ensure that it meets its obligations under international human rights law. In terms of the prohibit aspect, states under international human rights law are required to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. This has been spoken about by some of the previous speakers. It includes prohibit and address discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex characteristics by enacting relevant, comprehensive legislation. Ensure legal recognition of gender identity of transgender persons through a simple administrative process without abuse of requirements such as diagnosis and medical certification, or by forcing people to be divorced or forced into coercive surgery or treatment or sterilization. It also asks or states that people should ensure states should ensure non-discriminatory access to basic services, education, employment, housing, and healthcare, equal access to the law, and equal protection before the law. It also obligates states to reform outdated medical classifications that pathologize LGBTQIA+ persons, and to provide education and training to the police, the judiciary, and other public officials and law enforcement officers, as well as healthcare professionals, to raise awareness and combat stigma and discrimination, and to provide legal recognition to same-sex couples and their children without discrimination. And finally, the obligation to safeguard. This means that states are obligated to safeguard freedoms of expression, association, and peaceful assembly for LGBTQIA+ people. This includes safeguarding freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and association and ensuring that any limitations on these rights must be compatible with international human rights laws and must not be discriminatory. It also obligates states to protect individuals who exercise their rights to freedom of expression and freedom of peaceful assembly and association, including human rights defenders, and to protect them from acts of violence and discrimination by public officials as well as private parties, and to prosecute such acts when they occur. It also obligates states to consult LGBTI persons on legislation and policies that impact their rights. I'm going to repeat again that international human rights law places the obligation on states to protect, prevent, repeal, prohibit, and safeguard. And these international standards ensure protections against adverse actions. I've not named the international instruments specifically, and in short, it is because any human rights treaty or convention applies to all persons, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. And that this was entrenched in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was signed into law 75 years ago this year. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights is currently commemorating the 75th anniversary of that document, and is engaging in various activities through the Human Rights 75 initiative. And I hope that we can all join in the High Commissioner's call to rekindle the spirit, impulse, and vitality of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and contribute towards renewing the worldwide consensus that human rights offers the best solutions to our modern day challenges, including through countering discrimination. I think that dialogues like the one today are an important way of ensuring that human rights do exactly that and recognizing that they do exactly that. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Liganda. I now call on Ms. Busisiwe Dlamini from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to give a national perspective to the debate. Over to you, Ms. Dlamini.
Ngizicelela ukuthi ngiqhwabele izandla nami. Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, members of the Provincial Legislature, MECs, Chapter 9 institutions, the co-chair in her absentia, I think she went out, Steve, of the National Task Team, representatives, colleagues from the LGBTI+ sector, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. Nigahle family, happy family, bright family, forever happy, no stress. That's why I love this family. I always tell Abosbo that this is one family that is always happy, regardless of the challenges, regardless of the discrimination, of the violations. You find people always happy and accommodating. And I think that's a very important lesson for us, so-called heterosexual individuals. Ngoba si stressed kakhulu thina, very much. So without any waste of time, we have all heard from different speakers the sharing of information on the work that has been done in this province, in Botswana, from that other colleague, regarding the protections of the human rights of people on the basis of their sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics. So GSC people. The challenges, the gaps and opportunities also were also, identified, and which I hope will contribute in us when going back, replanning, re-strategizing on what needs to be enhanced, who needs to come on board to contribute effectively. Because I must say that from my experience with the sector, they are fully equipped with the skills, the knowledge, especially on sexuality rights issues. So whenever we do your trainings, that's the strategy we have adopted as the National Task Team. That we as the Department of Justice, we can say that we are experts when it comes to sensitization on the Constitution, more especially Section 9, the Equality Clause. But when it comes to issues of SOGSC, the relevant people to utilize are the people from the sector. Because when I go to the provinces, there are questions that come up that I won't be able to respond to. But Usbonelo is better placed to respond to. So Mamagama Sitini, nothing about us without us. So that's the strategy that we should endorse living here. Another one is that as lawmakers, Chairperson, we play a crucial role in acting as gatekeepers for social change, and we as a country have an obligation to protect, defend, and advance inclusivity that benefits everyone, including LGBTI people. I hope that the provincial government, led by the Office of the Premier, as I've learned last time when we were here visiting, we had a representative from the Office of the Premier, will consider the challenges that have been identified and provide the necessary financial support to ensure that structures, especially NGOs are closing down. Funding is drying out. So siyacela on behalf of the sector and the entity that where there is budget, especially from provincial departments that are part of the PTT, let's commit some of the budget towards this work. Our government, which is a human rights-centered democracy, is hailed as a beacon of hope by most in the region, in the country, remains committed in ensuring the advancement on the human rights of LGBTI+ people. What we have done as the Department of Justice on behalf of government, together with the National Task Team, is that the first thing we did was to host an Africa Regional Seminar. The Africa Regional Seminar was to ensure the protections of people against violence on the basis of their sexual orientation and gender identity. It was held in Kempton Park, and the end product was the Ekurhuleni Declaration. The Ekurhuleni Declaration, in summary, covers all the challenges that have been identified nationally. You know, violence, lack of knowledge by communities, homophobia, secondary victimization by us as officials when we are supposed to provide services without bias and judgment. Those are the issues that came up. Another one is statistics. At national office, we're sitting with a national response team. The national response team is managing and monitoring all the reported hate crimes cases in the country. We sit with SAPS at national, we sit with NPA, and about 4 nominated civil society organizations. Because for now, in the absence of legislation, we are dependent on CSOs for these cases. We get cases from CSOs, we also get cases as reported via media. So what we have done is that we have a template with all provinces and cases per province. And looking at the number of CSOs reps here, I always say what we have on the template, for me, it's not the true picture of what is happening in the provinces. In some provinces, you find that maybe, for an example, in Limpopo, you have just 3 cases, hate crime cases. How is it so? When you interact with people from Limpopo, they will tell you that there is a long list of cases. So colleagues from this sector, please make sure that whatever cases that you get, escalate them to the province, to Abono China, Nabo Sbonelo, so that we as the National Rapid Response Team, we ensure that those cases are monitored, and also where there are obstacles, we escalate. And to date, we have made much progress in terms of ensuring that the hate crimes, the pending hate crime cases, have been resolved to such an extent that now a case that is reported maybe like in 2020, I remember in 2020 during lockdown, Eastern Cape was leading with hate crime cases, followed by KZN. And previously they were the lowest in terms of cases. But those cases, 2020 cases, have been resolved. Not all of them, but majority of them have been resolved. meaning that the rapid response is important and has been doing what it's supposed to do. And now in the provinces, we have these provincial task teams. The national task team established the provincial task teams. So these provincial task teams, what they do, they implement the national strategic, what's the name? NIS, National Intervention Strategy. Ne? That national intervention strategy focuses on prevention, on response. When I say response, it's the rapid response team. Capacity building of officials to address issue secondary victimization, ne? And also the effective coordination of these structures. So my site visits to the provinces is to ensure that these established structures are working. But when we established them, I think it was because of excitement, you know, we established and we left them. And we hoped that whenever reps come to the national task team, they will tell us what's happening in the province, how much work has been done. But that is not the case. Hence, we are going to the provinces. We were here last year in November. And also, in addition to those site visits, we also did what? The training, targeting all the departments that are serving on the provincial task team, Chapter 9 institutions, and community advice offices. So this is the work that we have been doing together with the civil society organizations. Not that I'm boasting, but we have come to know that our department is the first department to work closely with civil society organizations from the sector in drafting a national intervention strategy. So we hope that also with our sister departments, that's what should be done. Because for us to come up with an effective strategy, it needs to be consulted upon. And the beneficiaries must have an input to it. We can't claim to say we know what's good for you. The sector must tell us what is it that we need to do. So that is some of the work that we have done as the department on behalf of government together with civil society organizations. And then now recently, we have revised the National Intervention Strategy. Some of you that have been in the sector for some time, Osbo, no Steve, no China, you know that the first strategy was launched in 2014 by the former Minister Jeff Hadebe. So that strategy has been revised, and now what's exciting about this strategy is that the strategy now has taken on board issues or problems or challenges faced by the trans and intersex people. The previous one, it was a bit quiet on that. So this one is a fully fledged one that is now serving, hopefully before end of August, will be serving before the cabinet for approval. So that is kudos also to our stakeholders in ensuring that the strategy is speaking to the current challenges. And also, in addition to that, is that this strategy, the previous strategy, focused only on violence. Because Minister Hadebe then received petitions from civil society organizations about hate crimes against lesbian women. This one has now been enhanced, strategy, to focus also on the human rights aspects, including unfair discrimination cases. So you're not only looking at hate crimes in terms of the criminal justice system, but also the civil aspect, including equality courts. So even if you have unfair discrimination cases, also forward them, colleagues. Ne? And then the revised NIS will ensure that also it has been recommended that the entity, for us to give it more weight, the work of the entity, it should be elevated to the deputy minister level, wherein our deputy minister will then meet on regular basis with other deputy ministers to discuss and share information on SOGS matters and whatever that needs to be done to ensure the enhancement and ensure a better or more protection of the human rights of the LGBTI+ people. We are aware that the lives at stake
1 minute left.
and lives need to Kodwa abanye bayasatshwa, eh? Okay.
They're within their time.
I would like to thank. Okay. We are aware that the lives are at stake and lives need to be protected, and it is our responsibility to ensure that the human rights of LGBTI people are protected, fulfilled, and promoted. And we'd like to thank all the civil society organizations, also Sbonelo, no China. I must repeat, I said to Steve, you are the first province to do what you did today. Enkosi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lamini. I am now going to call the district coordinators to come and have a 1 minute comment. There is 8 districts represented here. I'm going to call for them in this order. Alfred Nzo will be number 1, Amatole number 2, Buffalo City number 3, Chris Hani number 4, Nelson Mandela Metro number 5, Joe Krabi number 6, Sarah Batman number 7, OR Tambo number 8. There is a chair that's in that place. The first person will come and speak. The next person should be seated there already, so that it doesn't take time for people to walk from their seats to the podium. I'm now going to call for the first district. Alfred Nzo, 1 minute. Amatole, please take your seat in that chair. Over there.
Molweni. Ndizibulisela wonke umuntu, ndicela ueda. Kwi-transgender healthcare coverage, legislation can extend healthcare coverage to include gender-affirming procedures, hormone therapy, mental health support, and other specific healthcare needs for each transgender individuals to ensure that they have access to necessary care without financial hardships. Then illegal recognition. The legislature can enacted to recognize the affirmed transgender individuals' gender identity. This can include allowing individuals to legally change their gender marker on identification documents, birth certificates, and other official records without unnecessary barriers or invasive requirements. If they could have private doctors, public hospitals, ezizokwazi ukuncedisana nabantu kuyo yonke lonto leyo. And also, sicela uncediswa illegal protection. Legislature can work towards ensuring illegal protection for LGBTI individuals in rural areas, including allowing for legal recognition of same-sex relationships, anti-bullying laws in schools, and protection against conversion therapy practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amatole, which is going to be followed by Buffalo City.
Okay.
Amatole, your time starts now.
Ndithi Amatole mna ndikuzukulu ethu Kiyos. Mna ndifuna ugxininisa bethu kakhulu because kudala kuxoxwa kwezi nkomfa sihlala apha sixoxa izinto ezininji even nakwezinye NGOs ezinkulu nakwi-departments ezininji. Into ndicela mna u-social development because kuye kufumaniseke uba asikho Steve asizazi uba si-under which department okanye singaziwa uba sibili uba sifuna ufunding okanye sithini sifuna mhlawumbi izipeyisi. Umzekelo sicela mama ufande udala ndithetha nani sicela izipeyisi zethu uyayibona because sometimes sibana zezinye i-NGO ezangaphandle ezifuna usifanda but asinazi ndawo zifuna ne-physical addresses zethu but kuba singenazi ndawo oomasipala basihoyi ukufumana just a focal point whereby okanye indawo nje whereby sawuba nespace sethu sifumane everything zethu zapho like i-condoms and everything. As clinic also sicela u-Department of Health ilentuza i-youth friendly clinics zi-implement kudala kuthethwa ngazo ngu-Department of Health e-Eastern Cape. I think zimbalwa siyazicela i-youth friendly clinics whereby ngenda zibona ngakule Kapa ziyasebenza siyafitha pha kuzo because ziba nabantu abatsha nathi u-LGBTI.
Thank you very much.
Uyayibona bethu nani. Okunye ne-funding siyayicela kwi-departments lanto ibithethwe ngumama apha esithi i-funding siyayicela bethu nani.
Thank you, Amathole.
Okunye siyacela asiphangeli man asiphangeli sicela i-food parcels mama ufana asiphangeli sicela i-jobs sicela abanye abanazindlu bethu abawona zizindlu omamulu sitho belapha sicela bethu nani sifane
Thank you very much.
Order, Comrade Chair. Order, Comrade
Let me
Chair.
take this,
Thank
this
you.
time.
Order.
Uxolo, Khama.
Thank you so much, Comrade Chair. My name is Sihle Klassen, a representative from Sarah Bartman, representing the Embrace Diversity. Comrade Chair, as per this program that we have here, it's supposed to be a dialogue, LGBTQI dialogue, which we have had enough time, we have probably given enough time for all speakers that were invited to come here to present whatever they have from their side. But we have not yet been given our opportunity as LGBTQI people to discuss whatever and present what we have on our side. This is about us, as we have said. So nothing for us without us. Can we be afforded the opportunity to present ourselves to an extent that everyone that is here can see? Thank you.
Thank you. Comrade Chair. Comrade Chair. Uxolo ndicela umuntu ozawuthetha uzanikwa ndim.
Okay.
This program esinayo apha has been consulted with. Asikhange sivele sifike size nale program. The program has been consulted with the representatives of the LGBTQIA+ community.
Okay.
And it is what was agreed upon. Now we are giving, it is not even part of the program Le Party Siyenza Yongoku. We have decided that we're going to give each region an opportunity to take 1 minute to their coordinators to speak on behalf of all of you. Unfortunately, Parliament works through representation. Voters are represented here. So in Parliament, we speak on representation basis. We cannot allow everyone to speak. So this program has been consulted with your representatives. So we cannot allow an opportunity for everyone to speak. Otherwise, that's what we're doing now by giving a minute for each region. Thank you. Over to you.
All right. Koskakhulu Program Director, igama lam ndinguqhama Kanyamza, #ndingumomo wephondo, okanye umukeli wephondo. I stand ekulweni for amalungelo ethu as this community of the LGBTI community. Rainbow ke. Namhlanje ndiyafuna unibulisa nsithi okanye ndicaphula phaa kulaa ngoma kabethu Sile Mcinga ithi uNomathemba ngeli xesha lenyanga yamanina ndithi wabethwa uNomathemba ekuhlaleni kusithiwa uyathakatha. That's what we face in our communities. Oomama abamnyama bayabulawa as xa sisiya evenkileni siyoyika we might not come back endlini. Xa sisiya emisebenzini asinobuya. Also ndiyafuna ukutsho siye ke emapoliseni siyoreport into ezisehleleyo asihoyeke asincedakali abazinxibi i-name tags amapolisa akhoyo azibiza ngeziduko xa ufuna uqonda ukuba ngubani elipolisa belikunceda awuzofika uthi xa uyodibana ke ngoku nabantu abaphetheyo uthi ujwarha or something asincedakali mani kakhulu as this community. Also ndiyafuna ukutsho i-traditional healers i-traditional leaders pha ekuhlaleni pha ezilalini bona I believe bayenze into ekubeni basebenzise i-titles zabo eku-abuseni i-community yethu asihoyakalanga tu konke shame ewe ndiyavuka ukuba sikhululekile but kudala ndiyikhangela inkululeko andide ndiyibone. Guys ndiyacela zinkokheli zam ndiyacela kakhulu ndicela sisebenzisane uDepartment of Health asihoyakali kwi-nurses siyahamba siyoreport ukuba siye sadlwengulwa. I was once raped but mna ke ndancedakala. That's why ndisimagqolo for umuntu ongazange wancedakala. Ngicela sithetheni bethunana because usana olungatheli elingakhaliyo lifele embelekweni enkosi.
Thank you. I now call upon Chris Hani. Nelson Mandela Bay will follow after Chris Hani.
Chair Lady, protocol observed. Mandizazise ndinguvuyokazi wakwaDasheka ndisuke Chris Hani. Akho nto ininzi okanye ingathethwanga endizayithetha nam. Inye into endizayithetha endicinga uba inoba ibalulekile kakhulu imisebenzi. Sicela kuqashwe u-LGBTIQ ezindaweni, more especially kwi-departments, education, kwa-education, social development, amapolisa. Siyacela bethunana because ababantu siya kwezi ndawo sifike use ubuza uba wenza njani kanti ukuba ngaba bekukho umuntu oqashiweyo kwezi ndawo ubungazubakho lo mbuzo woba wenza njani. Make siyekwe ngowenza njani. Ezi programs zinje siyacela emaphondweni zenziwe kakhulu ezikolweni, zenziwe kakhulu ezinkonzweni ngoba kaloku ezinkonzweni ngoku asikwazi ukhonza ngoba sinamadimoni. Ezikolweni sibizwa ngamagama. So yes, so please ezikolweni nasezinkonzweni enkosi.
Thank you very much. Nelson Mandela Metro. Followed by Joe Gabi.
Good afternoon. My name is Nikita Nduma. I would first like to say I'm pretty unhappy with 1 minute. I felt this was a dialogue, but this was a presentation. But anyway, we'll continue in that matter. I feel there's a violence. I feel we are talking about representation and talking, but now within our discussion, the speaker will be given 2 minutes, thank you. The speaker will be given 20 minutes and as 1 minute, our whole entire region, that is silencing right there. And if we say for our representation, especially as women, and as a woman taking care, cannot even deviate to have some that we can have representation. The people who are here wanting more representation and they cannot alter that. That's the first violation. And secondly, coming from Nelson Mandela Bay, for the past years we have been unprecedented, unabated hate crimes, whether it's beheading, it's burials, whether it's corrective rape, or whether it's intimate partner violence, or where we're heading those cases. We're coming from that kind of a district, the most developed, the most macro, but having such cases, right? And then we had having no resources, the activists had to come together, create forums, and use opportunities from either if it's personal or work opportunities to come to work. That's how Nelson Mandela Bay has been working, using those social capital that we can use to be able to advance our duties. But what I would like to say is, can we legislate against hate We have equality clauses, we have inclusion, but the hate still remains. Where can we get to a part of social re-engineering where you talk about an integrated, interdepartmental level of cooperation, where you know that the dress code in a school does not discriminate against LGBTI people. The building on which we add, you don't have to put a sticker onto a name for a person to use a toilet. So can we actually go back to the grassroots and talk to activists? What do we need? And can there be money there that there is actual transparency? Those centers in each district, can we have a center in the district for LGBT community to work, please, and services? And can we be consulted? And I would just like, as one resolution, can this province, right, in the executive level, MEC and speakers, can we come back and have a session where the LGBT community can converge to have its
Thank
own
you very
charter
much. Your
for
time is
Eastern
up.
Cape maybe, and be funded so we can have our own program determined by us.
Joe Kabi will be followed by Sarah Batman.
Protocol observed. My name is Cindy Tobo, the convener of the Provincial Task Team of the Embrace Diversity. I must say, Comrade Steve, I'm very disappointed in this House that they recognize you nationally as the founder of the Embrace Diversity, but they do not recognize it provincial because you've appointed me as the chairperson of this province. The definition of a dialogue means conversation between two or more people as a factor of a book or a feeling. I'm standing here representing an organization that taught me so well, which is the African National Congress, that I must fight for a right thing. Comrade Chair, because we're here to just sit and listen to the speech that you are giving us. We have challenges as the LGBTQI sector. We know them. We deal with them every day. How can you say, come to me and represent LGBTQI, meanwhile you are not belonging on that sector? What do you know about that? Comrades, let me address this thing. Asiyi ndawo ukuba sizayivumela lento. Ukubulobuza apha endlini, how many NPOs or NGOs under this sector? Sibaninzi, because we cannot mobilize ourselves. Ngoku ndizawuthi qhi ndinguSindi from Jogabi and form another LGBTQI, ndiphinde ndizofuna umela yona in the province. Sizawuba 50. And we cannot hide under the banner of the AIDS Council. Masingabi ngomahambe hlala. If there's an LGBTQI nationally, it must escalate to provinces and the regions. So if sizawuphuma apha, Comrade Steve, we allowed lendo, ayizuba right, ayicingi be right. You must call us again for our thing. This is their legislature thing. This is not the LGBTQI thing.
Sarah Bartman. Thank you very much. Mandicela simnike i-chance eyothetha athethe. Thank you very much.
Honorable
Order.
Chair.
Can we listen?
Thank you so
very
much, comrade. Sorry, Honorable Chair. Izawuba ngathi ke ngoku sicula iculo elinye apha. Izawuba ngathi sicula iculo elinye, but ke kuba ezinye izinto sezithashiwe. I am very disappointed, as much as I appreciate the fact that the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature initiated okanye wayenza yonke lonto into kubona makube khona this event ye LGBTQI that was meant to be a dialogue, but yaba yilento iyiyo. I am very disappointed that Oxabakho Mafanta, as the MEC of Social Development, bengekho phakathi kwethu o safety and security okanye liaison. I'm very disappointed that uCocta engekho phakathi kwethu no health engekho phakathi kwethu because bekusuppose into yokuba ngabana when sizawuba nale ngxoxo mpikiswano as LGBTQI members, they are part of this so that whenever we raise consent sidibana nazo mihla nemihla singaba bantu abarepresente i-regions and districts apha, they are able into yokuba ngabana bakwazi uphendula kuzo. And ke ngoku umsindo wam upha kubo because i-department yakho iyasincedisa kakhulu. Ezi department ezingekhoyo apha zezi zingasincedisiyo ekusuppose into yokuba ngabana ziyasiprotecta. Cases were raised around Lando Nelson Mandela. It's about 21, Comrade Chair, cases of hate crime in Nelson Mandela and people that were killed. It's us, Embrace Diversity, and other formations of LGBTQI that were running. Kungekho mntu apha kuthi sijikiswe eMotherwell police station sithukwa ngamapolisa. I was even sent SMS threatening me ngomsebenzi wam nokuba ngabana ndingaphindi. I sent it to Comrade Steve. We wanted them to be here so that bazoziva ezingxaki esikhalaza ngazo. Secondly, ixesha esilinikiweyo apha does not afford us enough okanye allow into yokuba ngabana to touch base on the topics that were given to us. There were topics that were presented here. We suppose into yokubana siyangena kuzo chaze ngokunokwethu into yokuba ngabana how do we feel, such as gender-based violence. Imani miswa kuthiwa ngomama ntontontonto, but nathi we are being violated and ithetha ngegender yethu. The hate crime engakapasiswa nangoku imithetho yayo eParliament, which mna ndiyayilwa ngokunokwam because kuthiwa eminye imithetho ibekiwe and mikhulu, but owona mthetho kusuppose uyapasiswa obangela into yokuba ngabana sibulawe, obangela into yokuba ngabana sincikivwe, obangela into yokuba ngabana singakwazi ukuhlala okanye siqeshwe. It's the hate crime because sinikwa izinto ngemilomo sithukwe xa sifika kwezi ndawo sifike sesifile ngaphakathi. So I am very disappointed. I appreciate that the legislature yenzile le program, but it does not serve the purpose.
Thank you. O.R. Tambo.
Enkosi sihlale yona nto mnandi ngokuthetha ekugqibeleni kukuba mna ndizawuba ne 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. My name is Litagazi Sobantu from O.R. Tambo, Inguza, a mother to a very handsome boy. Chair, let me first start by appreciating the legislature for making it possible for us to be transported from our various districts, accommodated with food, of course. We appreciate that, Kakulu. Also, Chair, I must applaud the LGBT community members for dressing the part. Kuyabonakala size endlini yowisomthetho ngenene. We are very happy also that we are welcomed in a very dignified manner, hoping that ke ngoku into eshiyekileyo nje nencinci ukuba nizawukwazi ulibiza eligama lethu ngeyona ndlela iyo Mama Ufandi. We must be very proud of the fact that Mr. Mosweu from Botswana says ESA is seen as the first country to take a stance on the issue of LGBTIs, because we all know that it's not an easy thing kwamanye amazwe. So we must appreciate kuba iyabonisa uba indeed our government is a caring government. Also, we must appreciate and applaud the fact that now the legislature is seen as taking a good direction in having such dialogues like Lena, and we are hoping for more dialogues going forward. We must register, Chair, and demand that we demand respect ebantwini just like any other human beings. Not ukuthandwa ngoba sinabo abantu bethu, they love us so dearly. Pagwa Health, I think each department should consider having facilities of hormonal services so that they are able to assist abantu who want to undergo or take treatments as a hormonal. Dr. Kata, your message was clear and loud. We now know what to do to deal with some cases. Traditional leaders, we are happy to hear that we have such leaders of caliber as Wazio who understand us without being judged, hoping that you are able to influence ezinye nakwezinye indawo uzide ziyofika napha eFlagstaff naseLCC.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all the districts that came and spoke. It is unfortunate, ubana asonwabanga sonke, but as I said before, the program has been consulted with, and your representatives ezilapha besiconsulta nazo ziyanqwala ubana ziyayazi le program. Maybe kufuneka ku-improve indlela yokuconsulta. We accept that ihlambi ikhona indlela yokuconsulta different efuneka siyenzile, but siyabulela for all the inputs that have been put forward by the districts. And I now call upon Ngabisa Mahlala to table the resolutions on the matter.
Molweni ngalentsasa andizoba mde ndizibulisela kuwe chairperson nakubo bongo MEC abalapha no mayor be districts ngokwe districts abaphuma kuzo. This is not a complete resolution, it's a draft resolution, and it informs that when we live here we can think of other things that we have not covered here that we can put here as organizations. And I love the energy. Ngaske the same energy to organize yourselves, because we don't have organizations. Singacho zkhona asizazi. We need to organize. If there must be 50 LGBTI organizations, then so be it. Right now, LGBTI organizations are saturating NMB. And they are the only active ones there. There are 2 in BCM, 1 in OR Tambo, and 2 or 3. 2. And then there's Joe Gabi, and that's about it. What about the other areas? And forming an organization doesn't require money. It requires mobilization, Kala. Then the resources will come to you. I wish we could take that as our task today. Because when it comes to electoral processes within this sector, siyasokola. Because in terms of references, yes, better. Because we have forums, we don't have organizations. Forums that are not accountable to anyone. This is better up, okay. Going forward, let me get to the resolutions. Okay. A declaration by the participants. With the participants in the Commonwealth, Women's Parliamentarian LGBTIQ Dialogue, Eastern Cape chapter of the CPA sub-branch, gathered at Raymond Mhlaba Chamber, Bishop Eastern Cape, on 17th August 2023, declare our pledge to create a platform of engagement with society for the advancement of the rights of all regardless of gender or sexual orientation, to develop a better understanding of the meaning of coexistence in a diverse society with different sex, gender, or sexual orientation, to raise awareness on hate crimes meted out on LGBTI persons, to promote a positive and social cohesive society that respects and protects the rights of all persons regardless of gender or sexual orientation, to raise awareness on barriers to access to public services and as a result of stigma attached to sexual orientation. Having critically interrogated the importance of the state in taking action to create a society free of gender discrimination and hate crime, seeking to find solutions to issues related to the prevention of equal access to public services and hate crimes in society, acknowledging the vulnerabilities of gender non-conforming learners, and the need for increased advocacy among relevant role players to protect the rights of the LGBTI and children specifically. To resolve, to recognize and underscore the need for increased awareness on the right to equality and the prevention of unfair discrimination against the LGBTIQ community. Noting that South Africa has promoted the Equality of Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act to prevent discrimination and to promote equality, which includes full and equal enjoyment of the rights and freedoms in the Constitution and equal rights and accesses to resources, opportunities, benefits, and advantages, as well as substantive equality. Everyone is entitled to the rights set forth in the United Nations Declarations of Humans, which safeguards universal rights to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, including individuals' choice of sexual expression, the right to work and education. Noting the rise in anti-rights movements in the world against the LGBTI community and the criminalization of LGBTIQ persons, we further note that hate crimes against the LGBTI community infringe on their rights as enshrined by the Constitution. Therefore, we resolve as follows. We must promote a society that does not unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds, including race, gender, sexuality, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, age, disability, religion, belief, culture, language, and birth. We must utilize the platforms available in society, such as the state and the civil society, and media for education about human rights and protection from discrimination by law. We must also ensure that responsible state institutions are held to account for giving effect to the Bill of Rights as enshrined in the Constitution. We must implement the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act to prevent discrimination and to promote equality, and these should be monitored annually. To utilize data gathering from state organs to oversee the implementation of Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act. To introduce technology as a tool to assist in fighting against discrimination and hate crimes, to track and provide support for victims, and to identify hotspots where more resources can be deployed for further intervention. To increase efforts of international solidarity against gender discrimination and hate crime must be supported through platforms such as the CWP. We endeavor to pursue social, cultural, and behavioral change that will foster peace, coexistence with people of different sexual orientations. Creating gender-sensitive and inclusive environments for children and teens through education, resources, and programs that establish support groups. We call upon the parliaments and legislatures to exercise their power to enhance implementation of the laws enacted to end violations, discriminations, and stigma, and of people on the basis of their sexual orientation or preference. The general resolution is that we resolve to ensure that these resolutions tabled and passed in the provincial legislature accordingly. The legislature must follow up on the implementation of the resolutions and report back on the status of the implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ngabisa. In this I'm going to put the resolutions ebezigqobiwe nguNgabisa up, and the House, kanye the delegation, will agree or not agree. And then, after the House has agreed, they are going to be taken to the CWP branch committee of the legislature, and then forwarded to the office of the Premier for the Premier to implement and respond to the House. And then responses, the implementation will be communicated with the sector. I put the debate and the resolutions on the matter. There's a hand. How can I help you?
Enkosi mhlali ngaphambili nguAyanda nguMagebenge ifani. And then about you put it to the House to adopt. Uchindo bana siphakame sime sichindo bana siyazi.
Zotsho ngomlomo.
Eke ukuma kwam apha ke ukuma ndisithi I understand we had so many questions with regards to the resolutions. Kodwa ke as the resolutions do not reflect anything that esingakhange bekanti siyayinqwenela siyayifuna mayenziwe ngathi kunye nathi kuyo. Ndiphakamisa ukuzi endorser sizamkele sizithwesa uxanduva ukuba thina sizawubuyela back at our local constituencies and engage more deeper on them so that we can incorporate whatever programs that we wanted to reflect in these ibe yimisebenzi ezakuthi mhlawumbi in the 7th administration kusubmithwe ke ngokuzonezo ke besinqwenela uba zidityaniswe apha okwangoku nje masikhe sokusebenza ngezi.
Thank you very much. I put the debates and the resolution to the House. Thank you very much. I come to Upikisayo. I now call upon Umama Ukamilio Benjamin, our Deputy Chairperson of the CWP, to do the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Excellency, the President of the CPA, Eastern Cape Sub-Branch and the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, the Honorable Speaker, Ms. Helen Sauls-August, His Excellency, Chairperson of the CPA, Eastern Cape Sub-Branch and Deputy Speaker of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, Honorable Mlibo Koboshiani, the Chairperson of the CWP Eastern Cape Sub-Branch, Deputy Chairperson of Committees, Honorable Makubela, CPA and CWP Executive Committee members, Honorable MECs present here, Honorable MPLs present here, Honorable Mayors, Speakers, Chief Whips from district municipalities, and if there is any local municipalities represented here, Chapter 9 institutions present, and NGOs, distinguished guests, and participants from the LGBTQIA+ community, I greet you all. Let me begin by thanking you, Chairperson of the CWP in the Eastern Cape Sub-Branch, for your stewardship in organizing this important event. Albeit the disappointment, it is a very important event. It was really a turn of the events for the LGBTQIA+ community, as it is the first of its kind for the lawmaking institution to listen to the issues affecting this community. We are grateful and humbled by the amount of information shared and new ideas received in this platform, which will help us to further improve our oversight function and the work of our government. Yes, and it is new to all of us to really get that we must look at how we put the topic, because it was supposed to be a dialogue to yourselves, and yet you say you just came to listen here to us and to others. So it's that learning curve I'm speaking about. Many speakers have demonstrated good practical experiences in their speeches, and also it was important that we hear your voices at this level in respect to the issues that directly affect you as the LGBTQIA+ community. You have deliberated on the prevalence of gender-based violence and the hate crimes outside there in your communities and how they adversely affect your family life and other relationships. I believe immensely that profound experiences shared here are good lessons learned. The 2019 CWP resolutions of Africa Region Conference emphasized the need for an intensive campaign for advocacy for a more meaningful, equal representation in the Commonwealth Parliament. It is therefore necessary for this not to only transform society, but also prepare for a future free of gender discrimination, and hence the need to fundamentally change in the mindsets of our societies. As the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Eastern Cape Sub-Branch, it is in our interest to see the Commonwealth program seen positively by all of its citizens, politicians, and especially the LGBTQIA+ community, society, that has been neglected for some time, as you all has here said. Because of this, government departments across all spheres of government should take into consideration the important issues raised in this platform as well as the resolutions tabled. In closing, Honourable Chair, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to our esteemed participants and the speakers for the worthy inputs and the valuable experiences shared. Words of appreciation is also extended to all MPLs, speakers from districts, mayors from districts, our chief whips, councillors, and our esteemed guests for gracing this event. Resolutions taken here will be presented to the House and thereafter will be taken as House resolutions, and government departments will further implement resolutions taken at the LGBTQIA dialogue. Monitoring of the resolutions will be done through oversight processes. Thank you very much, Honourable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Camilla Benjamin. Announcements. MPL speakers from municipalities, speakers in the program, and invited guests are invited for lunch at the dining hall. Participants from various districts that are still to travel long distances back home. From here, you are therefore requested to go straight to your transport, where your packed lunch will be received. Coordinators and protocol officers are to lead you to your various areas. That concludes the discussion on this matter and the business of the day. The session is adjourned. I thank you.
Umtshini wami lo.